plans to put forward. He said that he would bring VAT down to 10%. That would mean 44 pence off a pint of beer. They would phase out business rates, and he said the real problem was energy bills.
Absolutely, but on Peter Mandelson, this of course marks the end, the absolute end of a long and varied political career. Peter Mandelson in the 1980s was an advisor to the reorganisation of the Labour Party under Neil Kinnock. He changed the Labour Party logo from a red flag to a red rose. He then became the Member of Parliament for Hartlepool. He was known as one of the three men behind the new Labour project: Tony Blair, Gordon Brown and Peter Mandelson. He had to resign not once but twice from Cabinet over a series of scandals under a series of positions. He was EU Commissioner for Trade in the mid-2000s and then sensationally was brought back to government by a man who likely considers himself to be an enemy of Peter Mandelson, Gordon Brown. As Prime Minister, Peter Mandelson became Business Secretary. Just when it looked like his career was over, fully over and done, he of course was resurrected by Keir Starmer, who appointed him as Washington ambassador, the American ambassador in Washington, D.C. That, of course, ended in scandal. And this particular Epstein scandal has put a full stop to a long and varied political career. The political Lazarus, the Lord of Darkness, as some people referred to him, clearly now resigning his role as a member of the House of Lords, ending this political career that spanned 4 decades.
Well, a lot of people say that he was very intelligent and that he was, Nigel Farage said that he was one of the best networkers ever and that he had a huge address book of some great names. And but I would say that I don't think he's that clever at all, of course, to be embroiled with all of the stuff with Jeffrey Epstein, even remain in contact with Epstein after Epstein had been put in prison for paedophilia, which most would probably not remain friends with him, but somehow it would appear in emails that he did continue with the communication, and of course this is the result of all of that. Somehow Keir Starmer has managed to distance himself from all of this. Of course, he had nothing to do with Epstein, but the fact is he did appoint him as ambassador to the US, which a lot of people question why he would have done that.
And it was a competitive process. The battle was fought across the papers, across the television studios of this country. We were widely led to believe that it came down to either David Miliband or Peter Mandelson, who would be Keir Starmer's ambassador in Washington, D.C. Keir Starmer came down on the decision to appoint Peter Mandelson, despite the widely reported association with Jeffrey Epstein, despite the fact we knew that the US House of Representatives was investigating Jeffrey Epstein and indeed had control of his personal effects, his emails. The government would surely know that those emails could have been leaked. The government was warned by Gordon Brown, the former Prime Minister, of a potential leak of market-sensitive information to Jeffrey Epstein by Peter Mandelson when he was Business Secretary. And yet, despite the warnings, despite the warnings in public and in private, despite the warnings from the previous Labour Prime Minister, despite warnings in the press, by journalists, by campaigners, Keir Starmer ignored all of those warnings and appointed Peter Mandelson as a man who could get things done in Washington.
Well, Nigel Farage said that he offered to work with Peter Mandelson as well, despite all the suspicions that he had. And an interesting question from Tim Stanley, who said, well, how do you account for Peter Mandelson constantly returning what was his appeal? And Nigel said he was very articulate, intelligent, well-briefed, probably the best networker. A bewitching appeal. But he said we can't trust repeat offenders, which Peter Mandelson did to keep resurfacing constantly, and he did have this constant connection with Epstein that most would have detached, knowing what he knew.
We know that his partner took a significant loan from Jeffrey Epstein. But this is a pattern of behaviour that stretches back through time for Peter Mandelson as someone who has forever been close to wealthy individuals. The first time he had to resign as a cabinet minister was over a visa issue where a powerful and influential individual was given an expedited visa, if I remember correctly. And of course, it's the same sort of scandal time and time again. Too close to individuals with wealth and power. This has always been the attraction of Peter Mandelson as one of the best networked people in Westminster, as someone who knows absolutely everyone, but like a firefly being attracted to a light, has always perhaps lacked that judgment, lacked that ability to stay away from the orbit of these wealthy and powerful individuals when perhaps often those same individuals are not the people to associate with.
Well, so of course the breaking news that Peter Mandelson has stepped down, handing back his peerage, so there doesn't look like there needs to be a Mandelson Act at all.
Well, this is clearly going to be the significant news going through the day, but we should say that there may have been some discussion around the Gorton and Denton by-election during that press conference with Nigel Farage. It's, of course, taking place on Thursday, the 26th of February. Well, the by-election was triggered after the resignation of Andrew Gwynn.
The Conservatives have announced Charlotte Cadden as their candidate. Hannah Spencer is the Green Party's candidate. Jackie Pearcey has been announced as the Liberal Democrats' candidate, and Matt Goodwin was announced as Reform UK's candidate.
Angeliki Stogia has been announced as the Labour Party's candidate. Meanwhile, Advance UK announced Nick Buckley as their candidate. Sebastian Moore is the Social Democratic Party candidate. The Rejoin EU Party announced Joseph Mircher as their candidate. There's also Dan Clark from the Libertarian Party and Sir Oinkalot from the Monster Raving Loony Party.
Wow. Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain, but that's the end from us. Stay with us, don't go anywhere, because Martin Daubney is up next.
Thank you very, very much indeed, Tom and Nana. What a hugely dramatic day in politics. Once again, you join us at the top of the hour, 3 p.m. here with that dramatic news. It's the end, surely now, for Lord Mandelson. It's 3 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GBNews. We're broadcasting live across the UK, all the very latest news, debate and analysis. And let's start on that breaking news story today. Lord Mandelson is to step down from the House of Lords. It has been announced by the Lord Speaker. Let's get full reaction in the studio with my star-studded panel today. I'm delighted to be joined by the A-team. GBNews presenter Chris Hope and the member of the House of Lords and former Labour MP Baroness Kate Hoey, and of course our Homeland Security editor Mark White. Welcome one, welcome all. Let's start with you, Chris. Yesterday, clearly the writing was on the wall. Dame Emily Thornberry saying it's not a matter of when he gets stripped of his peerage. This, surely now, is a matter for the police. Inexorably, things have moved on. What's the latest?
Well, a lot has happened. In the past moments, we heard a statement from Lord Mandelson. He says this, that given the public interest and for the convenience of the House of Lords, I've decided to inform the House that the Clerk of the Parliament has today received notification from Lord Mandelson of his intention to retire from the House, effectively from February the 4th. I think this is a statement actually from the Lord Speaker rather than Mandelson himself. I will formally notify this to the House tomorrow in the usual way. What's happened here is that, like all peers, and Kate Hoey will know this, when you get to a certain point in your life and you feel you're old or you feel you can't, you feel it's time to go, you retire, you're still called Lord Mandelson. He hasn't lost that. And I think he's trying to do this clearly to head off the Mandelson Act, which is being drafted right now by Sir Keir Starmer's officials to strip him of his title and his right to be in the House of Lords. He's removed his own right to be in the House of Lords, but he's still got the title, so I think the issues still remain. But a lot has happened. Well, I was with the PM on Friday night flying from Beijing to Shanghai. We asked him then about the Epstein files and Lord Mandelson. He said, I will not comment on Lord Mandelson. A lot has changed in the past 5 days.
Yeah. It's worth mentioning, Mark White, that some of the privy information that was passed on is astonishing. Passing on the notion that multi-billion-pound loans are about to be given to the European Union to save the Eurozone. This information passed to Jeffrey Epstein and who knows who else of his multi-billionaire friends. That's very, very privileged information. If you worked in a bank and you passed that on, you'd be in prison. So it begs the question, is that the next step for Lord Mandelson?
Yeah, there's no doubt there's real concern about the potential, of course, for people to make very significant amounts of money out of the bond markets, for instance. So that is something that, of course, the police will be looking at. We know because Christopher was at the lobby, an extended lobby for quite some time, a little earlier, that the Cabinet Office is now cooperating fully with the Metropolitan Police and passing on whatever information they think is relevant to Scotland Yard. I'd be really interested to know what they might have found, Chris.
Well, what they passed on is, Mark, an assessment of the emails. So what we don't know is these are policy emails. Some of them, they admit now, allowed the leaking of market-sensitive information related to the 2008 crash going to a banker who worked for JP Morgan, who knew other bankers too. That is where the problem is here. It's moved quite a lot. And also, I think this is the government trying to get a grip on a problem or a scandal they haven't got hold of yet. And even today, Sir Keir Starmer telling his own cabinet that the full totality of information is not yet out there. They are rushing to catch up.
I think that is a key point, isn't it? We know about some very serious, small number of very high-profile revelations now. But actually, you know, this is a man who had a relationship with Epstein over many, many years. He, at various points, was in and out of government in very, very, key positions in terms of the sort of the information that he was privy to.
The one thing I would say is the totality of the story is Mandelson and Epstein. It's not Mandelson in the current government. Now, I say that because, given what we know now about Mandelson, and he would deny all this, and there's no suggestion anything happened when he was ambassador to Washington, why is the government not looking at that too? Because clearly what's happened in the past, he was leaking information to other people. Of course, he would deny all wrongdoing.
Baroness Kate Towie, let's bring you in here. You'll have known Lord Mandelson for many years, of course, the king of spin, the prince of darkness, the man recognised as being one of the smoothest operators in all of politics. Even Nigel Farage said today, one of the smoothest operators in 30 years, a spectacular car crash downfall at the end game. Are you surprised?
No, I'm not surprised. And I think when he was appointed ambassador, there were so many questions being asked then. And that's where really the blame, I think, must lie with the Prime Minister, who clearly didn't get either very bad advice or didn't listen to advice. But, you know, he hasn't actually gone from the House of Lords because even though he has retired now and gone through that process, he'll still be able to come in to have dinner if he wanted to, and you can use the facilities. So I don't think that would put an end to the bill. I think the bill will still have to come forward, which actually would remove his title as well. And I mean, the reality is, when you look at some of those emails, and as you say, we haven't even got probably a lot more to come. We still have a lot more to come. He was traitorous, wasn't he? He was actually traitorous to our own country in a time when we were really, really in a very difficult situation. And when you get people like Gordon Brown coming out saying what he was trying to do even a few months ago, it really does, I think, still come back to Downing Street and the Prime Minister. And
when you think about the former Prince Andrew, his involvement with Epstein, very, very different from what we're seeing here. Yeah. The financial web, the privy information, the inside line that could make people literally billions of dollars if used cleverly, which, of course, Epstein and his multimillionaire banker friends, it's an astonishing scandal, and one that could end up even worse yet. Chris, then you've got a new line for us.
We have. On that very point, Sir Keir Starmer says people just see politicians making themselves rich. It has echoes, I think, of the expenses scandal. Just trading off information.
Financially, it could be much bigger.
We don't know what he made from it. Of course, he denies those sums. He doesn't remember those sums being paid to him. We've got a statement
It's so
now.
ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, how many of us wouldn't remember that kind of money being paid
and that point
to
is
us?
understood by Keir Starmer. He told his cabinet in the readout given to us, it's gobsmacking that politicians can't remember receiving tens of thousands of pounds. But there was a statement from Lord Forsyth, who only took over,
he'd just taken over
as Lord Speaker yesterday. Here's what he said moments ago.
Given the public interest and for the convenience of the House, I've decided to inform the House the Clerk of the Parliament has today received notification from Lord Mandelson of his intention to retire from the House, effective from 4th February. I will formally notify this to the House tomorrow in the usual way. Tributes to the Lord Wallace of Tankernes.
Michael Forsyth, as known to many, who's a cabinet minister in Thatcher's government. Day 2, he's making history there by announcing that retirement. Now, of course, we do have retirements all the time in the second chamber, as Kate Ho will know. This is doing it under a massive cloud. I don't think it will stop this bill being published, because he still is called Lord Mandelson. And that could have a bearing, by the way, on the Duke of York. He is still technically called the Duke of York. He simply has chosen not to take the title. What's happening here is, if a law is passed on this, it does mean that other titles can be removed from people who've been disgraced.
Yes, and that's what will probably worry some of my fellow peers, because there are people who have done pretty bad things in the past who are still around, even if they're not in the Lords. I mean, I'm not going to name anybody, but there are certainly a few there.
They can be Lord somewhere or other, can't they, in private life, and use the idea they're a Lord to get to make money for themselves, and that's maybe what is changing.
But this has to be different, surely, particularly if it verges, and we don't know yet, into the area of criminality. But I want to ask you another question, Baroness Zoe. Weeks and weeks ago, we were asking the questions about the dubious vetting process. People knew Lord Mandelson was a risk. They knew he was a cavalier selection. Let's put it mildly like that. And yet, it seems incredible. It seems astonishing to have learned at the time that he was vetted with less rigour than a school teacher would get. There was no basic look into his background. How on earth was that allowed to happen? Because now Sir Keir Starmer has been dragged into this scandal. Well,
it was allowed to happen, presumably because the Prime Minister said, I want Peter Mandelson. I want him as my ambassador. I don't care. Now, is there anything terrible about him? Oh, no, OK, fine. And that was it. But I think it is worrying because, that vetting process and the whole security aspect of it is something that, should worry all of us, because who else has been got through in situations like this. But clearly, I'm sorry, it sounds like I'm just against the Prime Minister, which I actually am anyway. But, I mean, the reality is it's the buck stops with him ultimately on this.
And what we're not being given is any of the vetting information about what did Sir Keir Starmer know when he appointed Peter Mandelson. We're told that the Cabinet Secretary had told MPs last November this won't happen. So we don't know what was told. We know that Gordon Brown, for example, complained after Mandelson lost his job narrowly about the evidence about the Royal Bank of Scotland being nationalised and parts of it sold to JP Morgan. Gordon Brown wants to know, was any information passed on?
Precisely. And earlier on, Nigel Farage, of course, gave the press conference about the Save Our Pubs, very quickly became encapsulated in this. He reckons Sir Keir Starmer is unlikely to survive the summer. Of course, the May elections are coming. But now there's a huge question mark around Morgan McSweeney, his chief advisor. What was his role in this vetting? Will it be enough? The papers are saying today that he could be a sacrificial lamb in this. Will that be enough? Or actually, does the book have to stop with the Prime Minister?
Well, I've just got a feeling that the Prime Minister will not want to lose his closest advisor, who also was very involved with, I presume, in pushing Peter Mandelson as going to be the ambassador. So that, it's just everything's piling up more and more and more. And of course, I blame Peter Mandelson for being one of those people out there who, after Trump came in, spent months trying to ensure with Jonathan Powell that the Chagos Island deal would be would be agreed to. And fortunately, that looks now like it might just be stopped, but definitely he would have been involved in that.
Well, on that, Peter Mandelson told the Times that there was a wobble last year in the Chagos deal. Now, Number 10 said that this lunchtime that with the change of government in Mauritius and America in 2024, it was, the cases were made again for that treaty, but they say they're still committed to it. They say, they quoted today the Rubio, the American Secretary of State, he's supportive. They didn't mention Donald Trump, though, in the meeting.
Yes, and I'm not sure Rubio said anything recently on it. But, we're not giving up on that because it's a long way to run. And, I have heard that if Nigel Farage said himself that if reform comes in, they will do everything they can to reverse it. Very difficult. But at least there is a signal up there.
We'll have to pay compensation to Mauritius. I mean, that's the problem with that.
Mark White, in your experience, in cases like this, where we're talking about huge sums of money, we're talking about, let's be honest, insider information, privileged central government information of the very, very most sensitive and financially lucrative order. Now it's apparently clear that was passed on by Mandy to Epstein. That surely should warrant a full investigation into all that. And if that's the case, the paper trail could drag in actors as yet unknown.
Well, I think you put your finger on a very good point there, because without a doubt, because there is a sort of paper trail, because we know that information was passed on to Epstein. They will be looking at now whether the information was acted on in terms of investments that saw a return, a significant return that smack of being potentially very suspicious here. But that is secondary in a way to the fact that that kind of very sensitive information was passed on in the first place, which I think would absolutely potentially cross that threshold of being a criminal offence just in its own right. But then if there are other individuals who profited off that, then they themselves could face criminality if it was known to them that the information that they received was information that they shouldn't have had, and it was inside information.
And if you think about how much Westminster got its knickers in a twist about a few people betting on the election dates from Rishi Sunak, this information could literally have made tens or hundreds of millions of pounds. This is knowing to bet against entire currencies. This is knowing to buy bonds and sell them and dump them and short the market. This is like the stuff of financial movies. It's the Big Short. Millions could have been made. Now, a full investigation, perhaps by the FBI, could be tracing that information back, the whole web, who made the money. Was that insider trading? There could be multiple people going to prison over this.
Of course, we should be careful talking about the betting issue for the election because that hasn't been played out in courts yet, and of course those involved
but the point I'm making is there was a huge political hoo-ha about how inside information was used.
Well,
this is now on steroids.
This is why it's so damaging, I think, for Keir Starmer. He sees this almost a bit like the MP expenses scandal. It's people with access to information through their job, paid for by us as taxpayers, potentially giving information which could let other people with their pals enriching themselves, make money. It has echoes, I think, of the COVID pandemic, the scandal there with the VIP lanes, and that's been now investigated and looked at. The Labour government is making a lot of currency by going after those who made money in the COVID VIP lanes. This undermines that. It says to... Again, Keir Starmer said to Cabinet today, he says that people don't see individuals, they see politicians getting rich here, and that's what's damaging the whole body politic.
I mean, but let's not forget, he was in the cabinet at the time when he actually sent on information. I mean, as a minister, I was a fairly junior minister. I mean, you were absolutely terrified of actually giving anything to anybody that might be able to use it in some way. These are things that ministers are actually given strong lectures about. So
he told a company to mildly threaten the Chancellor when he was the business secretary and the deputy prime minister.
And he said that Gordon Brown was going to resign a few hours. I know.
And if it transpires that this information was used to bet against bond markets, that's betting against countries. It's traitorous, it's betting against countries collapsing financially. JP Morgan controlled a lot of UK gilts, so they would have, and that threat of not paying more money into gilts to damage. Even then, it's worse now with the borrowing since the COVID pandemic, but it's bad then.
But in a way, Keir Starmer is insulated from whatever he may have done under previous administrations, but what he's not insulated against is his own decisions in deciding to bring back Lazarus, a man, who was kicked out and then brought back in, kicked out, then brought back in, was such a high-risk individual. And we really want to know, as a matter of urgency, what the advice was from the likes of the security services, and were there real red flags there saying to the Prime Minister, look, this is not a good idea, because if we look, for instance, at the likes of the super embassy for China, despite what the government likes to tell us about the security service not having any concerns, that is just not the whole of it. There were concerns. Yes, they said they'll mitigate those concerns as much as possible. They'll live with it, they'll deal with it. But that's not the same as saying they didn't have any concerns over the embassy. So I just wonder how concerned or otherwise were the security services about Lord Mandelson. You really get the feeling this is just the start of something that could be potentially absolutely enormous in terms of the scandal, certainly in terms of its financial aspects. Let's bring my next guest in now, and that's the former Labour Party advisor, Mike Buckley. Mike, welcome to the show. It's always a pleasure to have your company. What a day. Another terrible day has to be said for the Labour Party. We have to ask the question, how much did Sir Keir Starmer know? More to the point, why in the name of sweet baby Jesus wasn't Peter Mandelson thoroughly and deeply vetted? So this scandal could never happen in the first place.
I think the government clearly does have questions to answer, though I think we've all been shocked by the revelations that have come out in the Epstein files in the last few days. But certainly the government will want to now make sure that they go through every piece of information that was available at the time, and that they're entirely upfront with the public about what they knew and when they knew it. Because you're right, this isn't only Peter Mandelson's reputation at stake, although that's now clearly gone for good. This is also the government's reputation at stake, and I'm sure that they will answer all of those questions as cleanly and clearly as possible in weeks to come.
Mike Buckley, it appears that Sir Keir Starmer is doing what he's best at. He's throwing him under the bus. He's washing his hands of him. He's keeping him at distance. He might even throw somebody else under the bus who made the decision. We keep hearing about Morgan McSweeney, but we have to ask questions about the judgment of the Prime Minister. It's not the first time. We saw with Louise Hay, the former Transport Minister. It's not the first time that there seems to be an error of judgment in terms of vetting and deep diving into people's past. Precisely this kind of thing that those from the left get so irate about, someone from Reform liked a tweet by Tommy Robinson 15 years ago. Nigel Farage said something offensive 30 years ago. This is right here, right now.
Nigel Farage has been accused of racism by many people that he went to school with, and he's given no adequate answer to those accusations, and he needs to do so if he wants to be a credible politician in this country. And I will also say that comparing Louise Hay to Peter Mandelson, I'm sorry, it's just ludicrous. Louise Hay
It's a failure of recognition to vet somebody's past. It's a basic thing, and it's the thing, Mike Buckley, that the left, the Labour Party, demand of all their opponents. It's a simple fact of point.
Louise Hay potentially made a mistake with a mobile phone from work when she was 22 or something of that nature. That is not comparable to being a sitting government minister and sending state secrets to.
I'm not comparing the actual incidents, Mike Buckley. I'm comparing a failure of vetting, a failure of due diligence. Don't deflect. Answer the question in front of you now. Why isn't Sir Keir Starmer and why isn't the Labour Party doing deep vetting of people that clearly now has been a great scandal to your party's door?
I think we all need to know, and I'm sure the government will reveal what information was made available to Keir Starmer when he appointed Peter Mandelson as the ambassador for the US. I mean, there were questions raised at the time because it was known at the time that Peter Mandelson had been a friend of Jeffrey Epstein. And of course, Peter Mandelson has gone into trouble before when he's been a government minister under the Blair government as well. So there were questions and indeed raised eyebrows at the advisability of appointing Mandelson at the time. But Keir Starmer obviously was aware of those concerns, decided it was worth the risk, and decided that Mandelson would be an influential ambassador and represent the UK well. That clearly has not worked out as the Prime Minister anticipated. But I think we all need to know, and I'm sure the government will want to release as soon as possible what advice was given to Keir Starmer to enable him to make the decision that he did. But clearly, and I think it's important to also say, nobody knew what was going to come out in the files that were released last week by the US government. So there is lots of new information that clearly was not available to Keir Starmer when he appointed him to be ambassador a year ago.
But it was known to everybody that Jeffrey Epstein was a very close friend of Peter Mandelson. They were photographed together. They were clearly very, very close. That in itself should be enough to send up a whiff of suspicion. The Prince of Darkness, that's a bit of a nickname. I wonder why he got that nickname. Don't you think there are lots of question marks in the past now, and this is quite simply a scandal that perhaps could have been avoided?
The government, I mean, you're right, in the sense the government does need to set out what information it had at its disposal and why it made the decision that it did to appoint Peter Mandelson to be ambassador to the US, regardless of this known association with Jeffrey Epstein. But it is also important to say the information that came out in the last few days in this new release of Epstein files, that wasn't nobody knew that information other than this small section of the US government. So there's no way that Keir Starmer could have known about the leak of state secrets, for example, or the fact that Peter Mandelson was leaking information to Jeffrey Epstein. That is new information, and quite rightly the government have responded. And Peter Mandelson has now gone from the Labour Party and gone from the House of Lords, which is entirely right. And indeed, the police are investigating him, which is also entirely right.
OK, thanks for your opinion and thanks for your time on the show today. Sincerely appreciate it. That's the former Labour Party advisor, Mike Buckley. Now, let's get straight now to GBNews' chief political correspondent, Catherine Forster, who was with Nigel Farage there earlier on. It was supposedly meant to be a press conference about saving our pubs. And now we have an altogether more intoxicating brew, political scandal. And Nigel Farage was questioned endlessly about Peter Mandelson, the scandal now that's cast a huge shadow over all of Westminster.
Yes, absolutely. We will talk about pubs. I am in one, as you see, in just a minute. But Peter Mandelson, I asked Nigel Farage about what had happened, and specifically about the action that the Prime Minister is now taking, the very tough language, and so on and so forth, is going to be enough to get him and Morgan McSweeney out of difficulty. Let's have a look at part of his answer.
It is highly sensitive market information. It is government secrets. I also wonder whether, in emails to Epstein, he talked about the security apparatus that exists underneath number 10 and at the heart of Whitehall. That is information that is of national security importance. And so I think there is reason to ask the question whether Mandelson has not broken the Official Secrets Act.
This just getting more and more serious for Peter Mandelson, no matter that he's given up his place in the House of Lords. And Nigel Farage was quite excoriating about the decision to appoint him as UK ambassador to the US in the first place, because he said, you know, there were so many warnings out there. He'd been sacked twice before. They knew that he'd been friends with Jeffrey Epstein. They knew the risks, and they took those risks anyway. He said that he thinks it's a grave error of judgment by the Prime Minister. He says that he thinks Morgan McSweeney, his Chief of Staff, will end up being the sacrificial lamb, but at the point at which Morgan McSweeney goes, the Prime Minister is even more vulnerable. He prophesied that the Prime Minister would be out of his job by the summer, if not sooner, but also he's clearly quite aggrieved that he didn't get the job of UK ambassador to the US. He said that he'd offered to help, that he gladly would have done it in the national interest. Of course, no surprise that Labour did not take him up on that, but obviously that's something that still bothers him. And he did talk about the fact that back in 2016, when Trump was first in the White House, that nobody contacted him, that they didn't even have Donald Trump's phone number. And he said, such is the contempt for me from the British establishment. Well, they may have not taken him seriously in the past, but clearly they do take Nigel Farage very seriously now indeed. And on pubs, they have a 5-point plan. They want to cut VAT for the whole hospitality sector to 10%. They want to phase out business rates again for the whole of the hospitality industry that's struggling so much. They reckon they can get 5p off a pint. And this is to be paid for, they say, by putting back that 2-child cap on child benefit. They say that that's £3 billion and that would fund this. Somebody did say to them, how does it look to be talking about putting children back in poverty to save money off a pint? He said, this is not about pints, this is about jobs, this is about the economy, this is about real people and growth.
Catherine Forbes, going to have to call time on you there. Thanks for your input, as ever. Let's get back to the studio and get some more reaction from Baroness Kate Towie, also with Chris Open, of course, Mark White. Baroness Kate Towie, let's get to you first. If I go, there seems to be now there's this huge sort of squabble, the party political squabble. Labour Party need to own this.
Yeah, and
this is a Labour Party scandal. It's been Labour Party forever, through and through. One of the in the top echelons of the Blair regime was whisked into this ambassadorial role, clearly with a poor vetting process. They need to own it.
Yeah, and to be fair, at the time there were some Labour MPs who expressed, if not publicly, certainly quietly, reservations. But now is the time for them to come out and actually say, look, this is not really a party political issue now. This is about someone who has, betrayed our country almost, apart from all the other awful implications. And, I would hope that some of them would do that. And, the whole loyalty thing, you can be loyal so far to your party, but there are times when you actually have to say this is wrong, and the leader is wrong.
Well, the feeling when he was appointed as ambassador was the sour grapes from his old political enemies, but the detail of the relationship, the links to Epstein, only emerged with that birthday book, when Epstein was 50, about 2001 or 2002. What we're seeing now is far worse, actually, I think, and that's why it's getting... we hear the PM saying today to the Cabinet, he has let this country down. There's no worse thing to say of a public figure.
And Peter Mandelson sort of posing in his underwear. I mean, it's embarrassing, it's ridiculous, but this is something completely different. Privileged information being passed on to billionaires.
Yep.
If that's leverage...
I mean, he could have survived if, you know, in the sense of probably staying in the Lords even, if all this recent stuff about the financial dealings is much more, in a sense, directly affecting, you know, our constitution and our democracy. And I think that's probably why, you know, it is much, much worse.
And the government is racing to get ahead of it. So the PM said today that we don't know the totality of links between Epstein and Mandelson. So it might get worse before it gets better. I say get better. None of this is good, by the way. What I mean by that is it's limited to Mandelson and Epstein.
It can't get better.
Well,
it's a magnitude mark wide of how bad it gets from here on in.
Yes, and as I say, we only know... I think a very, very limited amount of what the relationship was, how much information over the years may have been passed. There's lots of documents out there. Let's just see what else in the way of indiscreet information was passed, very secret information perhaps that was passed.
And Chris Hope. Never mind the past, never mind this information. What about his time as the ambassador to the United States? Do we need to cast a microscope over all of that?
Well, there is no suggestion of wrongdoing as ambassador, but, and I asked this repeatedly in the briefing today of Number 10, why are we not looking at that as well? If he was doing this for his friends in the old days, why? What's the guarantee that wasn't carrying on when he became the ambassador? And the reason why that is very, very difficult is that will go to the heart of Keir Starmer's judgment. We know that's already been questioned, but if he was doing, and there's no suggestion he was doing any of this, but if he was giving out information he shouldn't do to his friends elsewhere when he's ambassador, that is a real major crisis for the Prime Minister. No suggestion yet.
It all comes back to the naivety of inviting a fox into the chicken pen. Let's be, candid.
I think that's a great analogy.
Right, and then being surprised when it goes on a bit of a spree.
Well, to be fair to the PM, we didn't know about the level of foxiness, as it were, or the level of what he was up to with giving out information, which, of course, I mean, Peter Mandelson doesn't recognise some of these emails, he doesn't recognise some of the payments, so we should note that for the record. But he didn't know the scale of what was going on when he appointed him, we're told. It was quite a cursory two-page question-answer of Peter Mandelson about his links to Epstein.
But they knew that this is an individual who disgraced himself on multiple other occasions. This is a high-risk appointment. They decided to take a very high-risk decision and give him that very plum rule.
Because of Trump, because you're a deal maker with someone who...
Gentlemen, I'd like to give the final word to Baroness Kate. So at the start of this, the first question I asked you was, are you surprised? You said no.
No, I'm not. I'm not surprised. I mean, I have to say I'm surprised at the traitorous way that, as I've used that word before, of what has come out recently. I'm very, very surprised that someone who was seen as such a hugely important person in the Blair government and right throughout could have stooped to sending the kind of information he did to someone who was clearly not loyal to our country.
One final question. Peter Mandelson had a legendary ability to woo, to charm. Was that ability used on the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, and might that come back to severely haunt him?
Well, I said Keir Starmer is ultimately responsible for this. He's not responsible for what Peter Mandelson did in the cabinet way back, but he is responsible for appointing him to a position that is now having a very, very detrimental effect. I think, we think this is only just in this country, but I'm sure this is now being quite big news in America as well.
I honestly think
Martin,
this is just getting...
Can you remember the laughing and the scoffing that there was when Donald Trump once suggested that Nigel Farage might make a good US ambassador? Yeah. Well, I think we can honestly say that he would be a damn sight less of a risk than the ambassador.
Because he believes in the national interest. Now, I know it's pushed by, I think, Liam Fox back in the day, and Trump won. It wasn't accepted by the Tory government. Labour also rejected it. If they would, I think, listen to him on his own terms, they would have benefited the country.
Yeah.
Baroness Kate Hoey, Fantastic. Thanks for coming in on this tumultuous day. Gentlemen, we'll have much more of you later on the show. I've been told we must move on. There's loads more still to come between now and 4 p.m, including it's a Spanish armada of 500,000 immigrants heading towards Britain. Our man Mark White will have all the very latest on a fresh immigration scandal. But first, it's time for your latest news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. Yes, that breaking news this hour that Lord Mandelson is to step down from the House of Lords. It has been announced by the Lord Speaker this afternoon. It comes after the Cabinet Office referred material to the police after reviewing Jeffrey Epstein file documents that suggest alleged leaks of sensitive information by Lord Mandelson. Sarah Ferguson's charity Sarah's Trust is set to close for the foreseeable future, just days after new documents detailed her friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. Among the newly released Justice Department files are emails which appear to show the former Duchess of York remained in contact with Epstein while he was in prison and later visited his Palm Beach mansion with her daughters following his release. Being named in the Epstein files is not an allegation of wrongdoing. Elsewhere, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage says the hospitality sector is on the edge of falling off a cliff as he announced a pledge to save Britain's pubs. The party has promised a 5-point plan to reduce VAT to 10% for the hospitality sector and change regulation to support landlords. And UK regulators have launched an investigation into X and XAI over alleged data protection breaches after Elon Musk's chatbot Grok was used to generate sexual deepfake images without consent. It comes as French police have raided X's Paris offices, part of a cybercrime probe examining claims that biased algorithms may be distorting the platform. Those are the latest headlines. More in half an hour.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB Digital Radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. More rain and also some snow and ice to talk about as we go through the night and into tomorrow. Turning quite misty and murky across the south, but at least here overnight it should turn a bit drier as the rain tracks northwards. We're seeing it turn to snow over the hills and mountains of North Wales and northern England, even coming down to relatively low levels for a time, so not great on the roads. The snow continues to feed into eastern Scotland and becoming heavier across the Northern Isles. Also, this brisk wind continuing to bring rain into the eastern side of Scotland as well. But in the south, as I said, at least turning a bit drier. But it will be a misty, grey, murky start to the day. Still quite wet over northern England and much of Scotland. Still with a shelter, largely dry in western Scotland. But heavy rain on the coast, snow inland across eastern Scotland, continuing to cause some problems. The total's really starting to build up here, and that wind blowing the snow around. Could well be an icy start over the high ground of North Wales and parts of northern England, with a mixture of rain and hill snow coming in here. But much of the south, much drier than today. And although it will start pretty drab, grey, misty, murky, should get brighter as the day goes on. Damp start for Northern Ireland, the rain edging northwards. Soggy day for the central belt. In eastern Scotland in particular, further snow over the hills and still a brisk and cold wind blowing here. But with some brightness in the south, feeling a lot milder than today, like as you get to double figures across some parts of southern England, maybe South Wales, with a bit of afternoon sunshine. Don't get used to it though, because look, more cloud and rain spreading its way up from France, and that continues to track north on Thursday. So again, more wet weather for England and Wales, turning again to snow perhaps over the hills of northern England, still snowing over the hills of eastern Scotland. And again, that cold wind blowing on those North Sea coasts throughout. The Met Office warnings are on the Met Office website.
Thank you, Britain, for helping us reach 10 million followers across our social media platforms. We're truly honoured to have your trust, one follower at a time.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. On the A82 northbound at Drumna Droshit, traffic is restricted after a broken down vehicle. The A55 is seeing disruption in both directions, with delays building. In Middlesbrough, the A66 westbound entry slip from the A19 is closed in all lanes because of a broken-down vehicle. In Cambridgeshire, the A14 westbound entry slip at junction 38 Newmarket East Road is shut following a road traffic collision. And on the trains, Great Western Railway has disruption on some routes, and ScotRail is disrupted on multiple routes. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Welcome back. Time is 3:39. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, as much of Europe veers increasingly away from pro-migrant policies, Spain's socialist prime minister is doubling down on his highly controversial decision to grant legal status to around 500,000 undocumented migrants. Now, political opponents have branded the amnesty as madness and warn it will simply encourage many more illegal migrants to head towards Spain from Africa. Now, an influx of more migrants able to move freely around Europe has also raised fresh concerns that some will inevitably head further north. An attempt to cross the Channel. Might the Spanish Armada be coming towards the United Kingdom? Let's bring in now GB News' Homeland Security Editor Mark White, and as well as GB News' political editor Chris Hope. Mark White, another exclusive from you. Let's start, if we could, set the scene, and then you've got some incredible footage of a human caravan heading towards Spain.
Yeah, well, this is the government of Pedro Sanchez in Spain, who's decided against really what so many countries in Europe are now deciding is the way forward, the policies, which is anti-migration policies. But look at that. This is the southern borders of Spain, with thousands of mainly African migrants coming into southern Spain, heading towards the main centres of population in Spain, and responding to the fact that Pedro Sanchez has offered to legitimise those who are undocumented and arriving illegally on the shores of Spain. Now, he says that this is the right and moral thing to do, that actually for the economy of Spain, it's the right thing to do with an ageing population. But there are real concerns among many people, Martin, in Spain itself. We can show you some other images, actually, of the reaction within some of the bigger cities. Thousands of people outside consulate buildings queuing for documentation that shows that they've been behaving themselves, that they don't have criminal records, because you have to have a clean record, we're told, to qualify for this legitimacy and the ability then to work, and of course your freedom of movement around Spain and elsewhere in Europe.
Mark White, the Prime Minister of Spain, they say Pedro Sanchez, he's lauded by liberals across the world as being an anti-Trump socialist. But here's the problem. You can see clearly the chain reaction that this has set off. OK, 500,000 people here illegally, you're now legal. The message that's sent out to mainland Africa has created a caravan, the likes of which we haven't seen since the Syrian migration crisis, into Germany, when 1 million went into the country. And that's that poster, you remember? Breaking point from Nigel Farage. You put that poster up. And the point is this. Could we be seeing those queues in Spain now, queuing soon to get a dinghy in Calais towards Dover?
Well, I think inevitably we will, because we always see a proportion of those who enter Europe's southern borders that have no intention of staying in southern Europe. They want to get to the rich industrialised north of Europe, and in particular, many want to get to the northern shores of France with a view to getting over the English Channel to the UK. And those that are opposed to what Pedro Sanchez has done here point to we all remember that decision by Angela Merkel back in 2015 to say to Syrians at a time of chaos, of a civil war in Syria, but that you're welcome. And what happened? 1.3 million Syrians decided they felt welcome in Germany and decided to head there. We should say we've got a clip from Pedro Sanchez, the Spanish Prime Minister, doubling down on the decision, justifying the decision. Let's have a listen.
Some say we've gone too far, that we're going against the current. But I would like to ask you, when did recognizing rights become something radical? When did empathy become something exceptional? Spain is above all a welcoming country, and this is the path we choose: dignity, community and justice.
Chris Hope, the Prime Minister Keir Starmer has got the inbox from hell. His in-tray is stuffed full of Mandelson, full of local elections looming, backbench rebellions, Andy Burnham, leadership challenges. The last thing Sir Keir Starmer needs is the prospect of a fresh ingress of small boat migrants heading towards the coast. As we hit that crucial spring period, could this Spanish armada become a Spanish Starmada?
The PM can't catch a break at the moment. I think we're waiting for some big intervention, big speech on the cost of living crisis. It was planned for last week. I think the week before last was the Greenland crisis. And he keeps trying to make these big moments about what he cares about. When we met him in Reading about 3 weeks ago, his big idea was to talk about the cost of living crisis. And yet, repeatedly, events keep pushing him off course. Here's the latest one. The difference with Germany in 2015 is that back then, the concern then was migrants could take German nationality and come straight to the UK legally. What this will do, and Mark's right, is put pressure on the northern border in France and drive more migrants across in small boats, possibly.
Because the point is, Mark White, Germany was very sticky in terms of migrants staying there because it gave them fantastic citizenship rights, great benefits, housing, caused a huge schism. Perhaps the country will never get over that. Spain has got record youth unemployment. There's hardly anything there. Surely, economically, then, the journey will continue.
Yes, and one thing that they do have in common with Germany is that there has been very significant levels of crime and terrorism that have been linked to asylum seekers, migrants coming into that country in recent years. And in Spain, very significant levels of criminality as well being linked to migrants. 30% of all crimes committed in Spain are committed by migrants. Now, that's 30% compared to 14% of the population who are migrants. So that a quick extrapolation tells you that you're twice as likely to commit criminal offences if you're a migrant rather than someone born and bred in Spain.
It's an absolutely fascinating topic, this chain reaction of events that have been set off. Chris Hope, Mark White, I'm being screamed at. We have to get to... Go on, quickly.
I've got a breaking statement here from Downing Street about Peter Mandelson's peerage. They say this is right that Peter Mandelson will no longer be a member of the House of Lords. As the PM said this morning, Peter Mandelson has let his country down.
Thank you very much, Chris Hope, for that breaking news line. Mark White, see you in the next hour. Now, coming up next, outraged pensioners are calling on the government to rule against, its cruel review to scrap Freeview TV. This is GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Venice is being invaded by cannibalistic jellyfish with vanishing bottoms, and they're wreaking havoc across the city's fragile lagoon ecosystem. Well, it is indeed Tom's favourite time of the day. Tom Harwood, over to you.
Not many people know this, but the B in GB News actually stands for biology, marine biology, that is. So welcome to Marine Biology Corner. We're going to have a look at what is a remarkable jellyfish. Let me just set the scene with some water here. And this is known as the warty comb jelly. Some people call it the sea walnut, because this particular jellyfish has basically a pretty stationary lifestyle. It looks like it's almost not moving, but there are some remarkable things about this jellyfish. Number one, it is a hermaphrodite. So let's just sort of, it's a hermaphrodite. It can reproduce by itself and choose whether to use large or small gametes in order to do so. I'll let your imaginations run wild on that. It's also functionally immortal. This jellyfish is one of those sorts of jellyfish that can actually revert back to an early life stage. It can sort of reverse its own puberty and then go through those life cycles again and again and again, functionally immortal unless something eats it. But perhaps the most concerning thing about this particular jellyfish is it's got a transient anus. Now, what does that mean? That means that when this jellyfish needs to excrete, an anus appears, but then once the excretion is over, the anus just completely disappears again.
GB News, the People's Channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 10 to 4. You've been Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, outraged pensioners are calling on the government to rule against this review to scrap Freeview TV. Now, that could plunge the most vulnerable into isolation and force millions to pay for expensive broadband contracts they simply don't want. Now, a petition has now amassed more than 100,000 signatures, and joining me now is the director of Silver Voices, Dennis Reed, who started this petition. Dennis, always a delight to have you on the show. It sincerely is, and it's not fair to get pensioners who just want to switch on their TV, and many of them do, to watch GB News. Thank you to all of them who are tuning in now on Freeview, to be expected to update. They don't want it. They don't want to go there. Why force them?
Well, absolutely. And it's not just the vulnerable and older people that are going to suffer here, Martin. It's all low-income people who can't afford to have the expensive broadband contract that will be needed if terrestrial TV is switched off and everybody has to get broadband in order to see their favourite programmes, of course, including GB News. So yes, it is extremely important. Millions of people are sitting at home who may have internet TV at the moment, but they also have an aerial on the roof or in the loft, which if they couldn't afford that broadband contract, they could always fall back on and get Freeview TV. Now, the government's going to take a decision in the next few months, a very important decision, about whether to switch off those terrestrial signals. And that has major implications for the economy too, because emergency services rely on the same signal system. Radio relies on the same system. And this is a vital part of our infrastructure, which must not be turned off.
It's recently I got rid of my internet TV provider. I won't name them. It was utterly pants. I just got sick of a rubbish service, and I went back to my TV aerial. I plug it in the back of my telly. I go on Freeview. I get my channels. No subscriptions. No one wagging a finger. No control. Why are they changing it?
Well, that's the important point, Martin, the reliability as well, that the reliability that we've been used to for so long of Freeview TV. It's not as reliable. The internet is not so reliable. And a lot of older people may be forced to have internet TV, but then the internet goes wrong. You have to reboot it. Something goes wrong. There's a sudden freeze in the picture. A lot of people don't know what to do in those circumstances. And what we will find that a large number of people are no longer looking at TV. At the moment, there's 98.5% of households in the UK have access to TV. So everybody can share in moments of national celebration, national crises like COVID and so on. Everybody can share. If internet-only TV is brought in, that number of 98.5% will fall dramatically. And it'll mean a lot of people are isolated from the rest of society.
So I need to interject. You've got a quick 10 seconds. If people want to sign your petition, well, how do they get hold of it? Where is it, mate?
It's on change.org. Just look up Save Freeview and sign the petition. Please do.
Magnificent stuff. Thank you, as ever, for sticking up for pensioners. I sincerely respect your work. Dennis Reed, Director of Civil Voices, thanks for joining us today on GB News. And thanks for everybody out there watching GB News. If you're on Freeview, more power to you. Thanks for all of your views. Now, still to come, we'll get more reaction to that astonishing breaking news that Peter Mandelson has stepped down from the House of Lords over the Epstein scandal. Could the financial scandal be next? That's next on GB News.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. More rain and also some snow and ice to talk about as we go through the night and into tomorrow. Turning quite misty and murky across the south, but at least here overnight it should turn a bit drier as the rain tracks northwards. We're seeing it turn to snow over the hills and mountains of North Wales and northern England, even coming down to relatively low levels for a time, so not great on the roads. The snow continues to feed into eastern Scotland and becoming heavier across the Northern Isles. Also, this brisk wind continuing to bring rain into the eastern side of Scotland as well. But in the south, as I said, at least turning a bit drier. But it will be a misty, grey, murky start to the day. Still quite wet over northern England and much of Scotland. Still with the shelter, largely dry in western Scotland. But heavy rain on the coast, snow inland across eastern Scotland, continuing to cause some problems. The total's really starting to build up here, and that wind blowing the snow around. Could well be an icy start over the higher ground of North Wales and parts of northern England, with a mixture of rain and hill snow coming in here. But much of the south, much drier than today. And although it will start pretty drab, grey, misty, murky, should get brighter as the day goes on. Damp start for Northern Ireland, the rain edging northwards. Soggy day for the central belt. In eastern Scotland in particular, further snow over the hills and still a brisk and cold wind blowing here. But with some brightness in the south, feeling a lot milder than today, like as you get to double figures across some parts of southern England, maybe South Wales, with a bit of afternoon sunshine. Don't get used to it though, because look, more cloud and rain spreading its way up from France, and that continues to track north on Thursday. So again, more wet weather for England and Wales, turning again to snow perhaps over the hills of northern England, still snowing over the hills of eastern Scotland. And again, that cold wind blowing on those North Sea coasts throughout. The Met Office warnings are on the Met Office website.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you to our global community for watching and listening to GB News. We're not only the #1 news channel in Britain, we're chosen by you around the world.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. On the A82 northbound at Drumnadrochit, a broken down vehicle is restricting the road. In Middlesbrough, the A66 westbound entry slip from the A19 is closed in all lanes due to another broken down vehicle, with conditions expected to improve between 4:30 and 4:45 this afternoon. In Surrey, the A3 northbound between the A322 and the A3100 has one lane closed after a road traffic collision, causing delays of around 20 minutes. And on the trains, Great Western Railway is reporting disruption on some routes, and Elna has disruption between Arbroath and Aberdeen. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
We want you to set off on the destination of your dreams this year, as you could win an incredible holiday for two worth £10,000. Courtesy of Riviera Travel, you'll get to choose from 47 tours in over 30 worldwide destinations. We'll also give you £30,000 in tax-free cash to make sure you really make a splash this summer.
For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB19, PO Box 8690, Derby, DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 27th of February. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray, are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News, broadcasting as usual for you live across the UK. All the very latest news, debate and analysis all the way through until 6 p.m. We've got an absolutely stonking show for you today, and here's what's on your menu.
Given the public interest and for the convenience of the House, I decided to inform the House that the Clerk of the Parliament has today received notification from Lord Mandelson of his intention to retire from the House, effective from 4th February. I will formally notify this to the House tomorrow in the usual way.
Breaking news, it's curtains for the Prince of Darkness. Peter Mandelson is to step down from the House of Lords following the latest revelations about his ties to the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. And meanwhile, Spain's socialist prime minister was lauded by Liberals after he decided to legalise 500,000 illegal immigrants. But it set off an astonishing chain reaction, as you can see on your screens now. A video of thousands of more young men making their way across Africa, with scenes echoing the breaking point immigration crisis into Germany in 2015. Might those men now be heading towards Calais and form a Spanish armada towards Britain? Our man Mark White sounds the warning. And ministers say they fear Southport-style riots after locals continue to protest at up to 540 illegal immigrants being dumped on Crowborough. On today's show, I'll be joined by the area's defiant MP. Plus, I'll be joined in the studio by the Police and Crime Commissioner, who claims she's been slammed for speaking the truth and supporting locals. And after a cherished statue of Britain's youngest ever world boxing champion was stolen by scum thieves, the campaign to retrieve it and to nick the yobs has gone viral. On today's show, I'll be joined by the emotional grandson of the boxing hero Teddy Baldock, who hopes to help cops KO the cons and retrieve that statue before it's melted down for scrap. Any moment now, after months of escalating tensions, Donald Trump will meet Colombia's president, Gustavo Petro. Anything can happen in that White House. There could be fireworks, and we'll bring you all of that live. Once the show, it's a pleasure to have your your company, beg your pardon. Fresh scandal for Sir Keir Starmer today. Mandelson being forced to step down from the Lords. But could this rumble on and on and on? The sharing of insider information about multi-billion bailouts for the Eurozone. It could be a scandal that engulfs the entire Labour Party. Any minute now, we'll be joining Donald Trump as he welcomes the Colombian Premier, plus an exclusive from Mark White. 500,000 illegal immigrants given an amnesty in France. Might they be making their way towards Calais? And might they form a fresh Starmada, a Spanish Starmada to Britain? Could there be a fresh wave of small boats on its way to us? Get in touch, gbnews.com/your say is the way to do so. We can scan the QR code on your screens. But now enough of me. Let's get to your headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. The top stories. Peter Mandelson is to step down as a member of the House of Lords following the latest revelations about his relationship with the paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein.
Given the public interest and for the convenience of the House, I decided to inform the House the Clerk of the Parliament has today received notification from Lord Mandelson of his intention to retire from the House, effective from 4th February. I will formally notify this to the House tomorrow in the usual way.
It comes after the Cabinet Office referred material to the police after reviewing Jeffrey Epstein file documents that suggest alleged leaks of sensitive information by Lord Mandelson. Emails suggest Mandelson forwarded internal government information to paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein when he was business secretary in 2009. A Downing Street spokesman says it's right that Lord Mandelson is quitting the House of Lords, adding, as the Prime Minister said this morning, Peter Mandelson has let this country down. Lord Mandelson has denied wrongdoing, insists Epstein's money did not influence his actions, and says he has no recollection of receiving payments. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage spoke this afternoon.
How many more warnings did the Prime Minister, or indeed Morgan McSweeney, need? They have made a grave error of judgment, despite repeated warnings. In politics, you will always get the odd bad apple in a political party, but it would appear that in the case right now of this Prime Minister and his Chief of Staff, their errors of judgment, partly their errors of judgment, have led now to case after case after case. Difficult for somebody who was already the most unpopular Prime Minister in living memory.
Sarah Ferguson's charity Sarah's Trust is set to close for the foreseeable future, just days after new documents detailed her friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. Among the newly released Justice Department files are emails which appear to show the former Duchess of York remained in contact with Epstein while he was in prison and later visited his Palm Beach mansion with her daughters following his release. A spokesperson says the decision to close the charity had been under discussion for months. Being named in the Epstein files is not an allegation of wrongdoing. In other news, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage says the hospitality sector is on the edge of falling off a cliff as he announced a pledge to save Britain's pubs this afternoon. The party has promised a 5-point plan to reduce VAT to 10% for the hospitality sector, scrap the employer national insurance increase for hospitality businesses, cut beer duty by 10%, implement staggered business rates, abolition for pubs and change regulation to support landlords. Mr Farage told a press conference in Westminster what is happening to our pubs, what is happening to our hospitality sector is little short of a disaster. And the UK's data watchdog has opened a formal investigation into X and XAI over concerns the AI chatbot Grok was used to create sexual deepfake images without consent. The Information Commissioner's officer says it's examining whether Elon Musk's companies breached UK data protection law, particularly around safeguards to protect personal data. It follows a separate investigation by Ofcom, launched earlier this year after Grok generated sexualised images, including of real people. The ICO warns losing control of personal data in this way can cause serious harm, especially where children are involved, and says enforcement action will follow if the law has been broken. Those are the latest headlines. More news in half an hour.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a snapshot of the markets. The pound buying you $1.3671 and €1.1597. The price of gold, £3,593.39 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 10,290 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Tatiana. Let's start now with that huge breaking news from today. And Lord Mandelson is to step down from the House of Lords. It has been announced by the Lord Speaker. Let's get all the latest reaction now. I'm joined in the studio by GB News political editor Chris Hope, our Homeland Security editor Mark White, also the Labour MP for Glasgow South, Gordon McKee. Gentlemen, welcome one, welcome all. Chris, let's start with you. The writing was on the wall for Mandelson yesterday, when even Emily Thornberry said it's not a case of him being stripped of his peerage, it's a case of will he end up in prison. Things are moving very, very quickly and not in a good way for Peter Mandelson. What's the latest?
It's in the last few moments, Number 10 has said this. It's right that Peter Mandelson will no longer be member of the House of Lords. The Speaker of the House of Lords, Lord Forsyth, says that he'll retire tomorrow, the 4th of February. He still maintains, though, the right to be called Lord Mandelson, and that will be that will remain unless there's a bill brought in by the government, as promised by Sir Keir Starmer after the cabinet meeting today. just about the only people who haven't, the only title he hasn't lost yet is one of the people of darkness worrying. He's the Prince of Darkness. Will they be concerned too about losing him? But he still remains the Prince of Darkness, anecdotally, nothing more than that. But Sir Keir Starmer's, he thinks this is a really bad moment for politics. He says that the public see politicians, not individuals, making money for themselves. Of course, that's denied by Peter Mandelson. They say, why is it happening? Well, it's gobsmacking, he told Cabinet today, that you couldn't even recall whether you received tens of thousands of pounds in this way. It undermines, I think, the government's attempts to paint themselves as different to the Tories. The Tories allowed some people to make money through the VIP lanes during COVID. There was a big effort by the government to pull money back from that. It looks like in the last Labour government, the friends were enriching themselves because they knew they knew in government, and it looks appalling.
Mark White, it's one thing to be photographed in your underpants, it's tawdry, it's shabby, it's not pretty. But it gets worse on the financial element of this, because the startling revelation that Lord Mandelson shared sensitive insider trading information about the bailout of the Eurozone to Jeffrey Epstein, and who knows who he passed that to, that could have made somebody multiple millions of dollars. People betting against entire nations, people betting against currencies. If the financial probe gets underway, it could be even bigger than anything that's happened thus far.
Yes, you're right. And that's why, in tandem with the ongoing process of getting Lord Mandelson removed in terms of his ability to sit in the House of Lords, and indeed remove that peerage from him, so he is no longer Lord Mandelson. In addition to that, that's why we have this scoping exercise now by the Metropolitan Police looking into whether there should be a formal investigation. Now, I'm being told from my sources that things are likely to move pretty quickly. We may get a decision as early as this evening on a formal investigation into Peter Mandelson, because clearly there's a lot of evidence already out there that points to allegations of wrongdoing. They're scoping out initially. They've had the Cabinet Office fully cooperating with them, passing on as much information as they can to those detectives. And all they need to satisfy themselves with at this stage is that actually there is a material investigation to be carried out here. And it absolutely looks on the face of it, just the initial evidence that's been passed to them, that there absolutely is. So perhaps as early as this evening, we'll get that formal confirmation of a full-blown criminal investigation into Peter Mandelson.
And were that to happen, it would stop the story, because it would mean you wouldn't be able to, all the coverage would be a live case. So the conversation, the chat about Mandelson and Epstein would suddenly stop, which may help the government. I'm not saying there's any collusion there, but it would help the government.
Chris, I want to talk to you about a story that you drove at the Telegraph. That's the expenses scandal. When the tendrils of how people... I mean, it's one thing to get a duck pond. It's one thing to have a moat around whatever it was. But this, potentially, let's be realistic, if you have access to insider information about entire currencies, this is to billionaires. Jeffrey Epstein was friends with hedge fund managers, with people who were extremely rich. This kind of information could be used in advantageous ways, potentially to make tens and tens of millions of dollars. It's a huge story.
And in that world, a few hours is priceless, because...
A few minutes is everything.
Indeed, seconds and minutes is what they normally deal with, but it could be hours can make money, and that's what I think isn't clear, and that's why the government's saying today there's a fear of this financial issues. That's why they raised the stakes. That's why they're sharing all the summaries of those emails. We can't yet see behind some of the redactions. And I remember vividly from the MP Spender scandal, redactions are all key. You get the full picture, which will be revealed shortly, I think, to the prosecutors.
And as well as the Met, that could be the FBI. There could be a huge, trans-border international story, the likes of which we haven't seen in a long, long time. I want to get my next guest in, patiently waiting in the wings here in the studio. It's the Glasgow South MP for the Labour Party, Gordon McKee. Gordon, welcome to the studio for your first time. It's a pleasure to have your company. You've walked into the Lions Den here, because this is, let's face it, another bad news day for Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister. The questions will be asked, not what Sir Keir Starmer knew, but why wasn't Peter Mandelson vetted in a much, much deeper manner before he even got near the post of being the ambassador to the United States? It's now a scandal that's encompassing the Labour Party in its entirety.
Look, I think Peter Mandelson is an absolute disgrace. I mean, I have been disgusted and appalled by what I've seen in the Epstein files, whether it was the emails over the weekend that were toe-curling, whether it's the photo of him in his underpants, hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein in his apartment or hotel, or whether it's the tens of thousands of pounds of payments that he's got and seemingly can't remember. I've got some doubts over whether he can't remember it or not. Look, the man is a disgrace. He's no longer a member of the Labour Party. There was disciplinary process against him and then he resigned. We said this afternoon we were going to remove his peerage, strip him of his peerage. He's then, I see this afternoon, decided to resign because he knows what's coming. I just think Mandelson's behaviour is utterly appalling. He has clearly routinely lied and misled people over many, many years. What we're talking about here with these emails to Epstein about financial issues, this goes back to 2009. I mean, it is shocking. It is appalling. And I'm very pleased the government's handed all the information they have to the police. They're looking into it, as we've just been talking about. And I would say, obviously, it's not for me to talk about a police investigation, but I hope they can do everything they can to get to the bottom of this, and if necessary, justice is served.
Gordon McKee, I used the colourful metaphor earlier on. It's like, you know, if you invite a fox into a chicken pen, is it naive after the event to be surprised when they've got blood on their lips? Let's be frank. Peter Mandelson was long known as being friends with Jeffrey Epstein, long known as having his fingers in many pies, and I have to push you again on the notion of, frankly, the amateur hour in terms of a deep vet of Peter Mandelson before he was given an ambassadorial and a hugely important post.
The government has a process for vetting him, and we've heard from the Prime Minister before, who asked him about the nature of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. He clearly lied to him. He clearly told him a total fiction. Because if you had even the slightest idea of this horrible stuff that has come out in the last few months, he would not have appointed him. And clearly, as he said, it was a mistake to do so. So I think, you know, this is ultimately the behaviour of Peter Mandelson. He has betrayed the country, I think, if it's found that he had passed this financial information.
Gordon, do you think it's going to wash with the electorate? People watching the show now say, oh, Peter Mandelson told me everything would be OK, and so Sir Keir Starmer believed him. Do you think that's a bit amateurish?
No, look, I think it's pretty normal to expect somebody who's been long-serving government would tell the truth. Clearly hasn't done that, and we're all disappointed, and I personally am outraged to see the horrible stuff that he's been up to.
But Gordon McKee, how can your government, your party, attack the Tories for enriching their friends to the VIP COVID lane when this is going on? I mean, aren't you all the same? You're literally all the same, out for yourselves.
No, because actually this is different. Rather than the Tories who turned a blind eye to it, we've thrown Mandelson out of the Labour Party. We're bringing forward legislation to strip him of his peerage. This is us taking action to make sure something like this can't happen. And by the way, there's another important point here. Mandelson's resigned his peerage. That's the right thing. But I want to see this legislation continue so that in future, if we have another member of the House of Lords disgrace themselves, we can actually have a process to remove them.
Do you think that's going to wash with the electorate? And I want to push you again about, you know, it always seems to be somebody else's fault with Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, in terms of, like, the vetting process, and maybe it should have been carried out, but maybe Morgan McSweeney. Will there be a sacrificial lamb? And how many more bad news stories end up at the Prime Minister's door before he finally admits maybe he's the problem?
The sacrificial lamb in this story and the bad egg is Peter Mandelson and his disgusting behaviour, his continued relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, which is utterly appalling and inexcusable. And frankly, I'm glad to see the back of him. Everybody in public life should be glad to see the back of him. I'm glad he's resigned. We're bringing forward this legislation. I hope we can strip him of his title, which he's got for life, as well as his position in the House of Lords, which he's given up.
I think Gordon said, you know, the bad egg is Peter Mandelson. And never a truer word. That is the case. He has had to resign on multiple occasions and been brought back after his period of disgrace. Surely that should be enough to tell anyone in any kind of position of power who should know better that don't go anywhere near someone who is so high risk.
Clearly, as I say, it was a mistake to appoint. I mean, I can understand going back to, before the appointment, we're dealing with President Trump, who is, of course, a unique president of the United States, and you've got to try and understand and manage the politics there, which was obviously the idea behind it. It was clearly a mistake. The guy has behaved appallingly. Had we known this information, he would never have been appointed.
He's a bad egg, mistake to appoint him, you say. He was appointed the ambassador to America for the UK. Why is no one reviewing what he did then? We don't know what happened when he was the ambassador. If he's a bad egg, if it's a mistake to hire him, why is everyone looking away from his period as ambassador? Why is that not being looked at? Of course, there's no claims there is anything wrong here, Well, why not reassure
Well, I
yourselves?
think, from what I understand, Chris, the Cabinet Office are looking into Mandelson, the whole process and everything about him. They've handed information to the police based on his previous behaviour. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. We've got to get to the bottom of everything this guy did. You know, he is a shameful character. What he's done is disgusting, and I want to make sure every I and T is crossed to make sure we get to the bottom of this. And it's not just the government looking into it, it's now the police.
Now, just if you're tuning in, of course, as well as the latest on all the Mandelson scandal, we are presently waiting for the President of Colombia to arrive at the White House, the latest in a long line of world leaders to face the music. The familiar sight now of that formidable White House door. Anything can and often does happen to world leaders that step into the Oval Office there. We haven't got the flags out yet. We haven't got the presidents out yet. We haven't seen the Beast home interview. But when it does, we'll be there for you for all of the latest fireworks to happen inside the White House. Now, before we go, Gordon McKee, you came in to talk about a project of yours today. I'd like to give you fair dues. We can't just bring you in and grill you. Tell us about your story.
Well, there's something really good away from the Mandelson saga the government's doing today, which is that parents and children who are suffering from cancer, which is, of course, just about the most horrible thing you could ever imagine for any family, they're going to get free travel to get to their treatment. And I think that's a very good thing, which, alongside the investment we're putting into the NHS to get down waiting lists, I think will be very good for families and children in the most horrible of circumstances.
Thank you for coming in and facing the music today. You know, I really appreciate your time. I sincerely do. And good luck with that project. That's the Labour Party MP.
Just a reminder, the government is doing these things. It's trying to do politics.
I know.
The £10 million fund, a third of kids go more than an hour to get treatment, but they can't get a word in.
A lot of MPs doing a lot of great work, and you know, I just think it's fair dues to allow you to say that rather than just being barraged by these questions, because you know, it's some bad news today. But look,
and thank you for taking a triple whammy, Gordon.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Now, as I just said there, we're waiting for crossing to the White House, and also a bus driver that was sacked for punching a thief. He wants an apology. This story has gone absolutely ballistic. He joins me in the studio next. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, DC.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 4:24. You've been Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, this is a story everybody wanted. A bus driver was sacked after he chased down and knocked out a thief who stole a passenger's necklace. Now, this is a story that's gone all around the world. Mark, how do I pronounce your surname?
Heher.
Mark Heher, he's the man here. He was driving that 206 bus between Wembley and Maida Vale when he saw a man push past the female passenger and steal her necklace. Well, what happened next went into legend because after becoming aware of the incident, Mr. Heher left his bus and he chased the geezer down the street and he took the law into his own hands. And it's best now if I let the man explain himself. Mark Heher joins me and the Conservative MP for Bexhill and Battle, and that's Kieran Mullen. Welcome to the studio, Mark. First of all, if anybody hasn't heard this story, they must have been on Mars. But if they haven't, over to you.
Well, it was June 25th, 24, and I drove a 206 bus between Wembley and Kilburn. And I pulled in Harlesden and a guy came on. Contrary to him being a customer, he actually didn't pay getting on. That's another point. So he was on, and it happens every day where guys jump on buses and the driver cannot be expected to stop everyone and ask them, excuse me, you haven't paid your fare.
Yeah.
So it's just an everyday occurrence now. So drivers are just kind of handling it the way they can handle it and just do their job. So 2 stops later, few people getting on the bus, and this girl in particular, Caroline, got on the front, and this boy came rushing down the bus, left on the girl, stole her necklace from her neck, and took off out the front door.
Yeah.
So she's a bit stunned at this stage, and I've kind of realised what's happened, and it was very, very quick. So I decided to kind of open the door, which you're not supposed to do, and I understand that. I had closed the door behind me, contrary to what Metroline said in the tribunal. I closed the door behind me, so it's not accessible to the public. And I chased after this guy. So I caught this guy after about 200 metres. So we had a little bit of a scuffle, and he realised he wasn't getting away. So I got the necklace back off him, walked back to the bus, handed it to the girl, and at this stage, a person shouted, "He's come behind you." So me thinking this is all finished, turned around and said, look, it's over. Kind of, it's done. We got the necklace back. Kind of move on,
Yeah.
But he kept coming towards the girl for some reason. And she's scared, and she's seen on CCTV, she's seen with her hand up, telling him to go back. She's scared. She's reversing back at the same time, and he's still coming forward. So I said, this guy's not stopping. And if anyone's ever been in that position or that situation where a guy has robbed you 2 minutes previous, he's not coming back to shake your hand and say sorry. There has to be an ulterior motive for him to come back. He was told, go away, it's over already, previous. So he came towards the girl. I stood between them. I put my hand out on his chest and I held him back. I said, look, it's over, go away. So we turned around. Caroline was getting on the bus again. Thinking it's over, I turned to go to my bus and I saw him kind of go to swing a left, which is clearly seen on CCTV.
Yeah.
And it was clocked at 0.2 seconds that I clocked him before he actually landed. So he went down, he was knocked out. So just to move on slightly, I dragged him off the road, which probably I shouldn't have done, but I dragged him off the road. He's in the middle of the road, so obviously he's not going to stay there. So I sat him up because he was kind of bleeding. I sat him up, I put him forward, my hands on the back of his shoulders, held him down so the blood would come out here rather than go down here. So I was concerned, seriously concerned for this guy, even though what he'd done. But the concern is still there, So after about 3 or 4 minutes, he woke up and he started flailing and kicking again. So I decided he's not going anywhere. So I kind of locked him up in some sort of wrestling hold or whatever. You wrap your legs around their legs and you hold their arms so they can't escape. Yeah. And held him for 29 minutes, I think it was. And it was 28 degrees heat that day. It was a really, really stifling hot day. And I remember a few nurses coming over from the hospital just beyond, and they were actually pouring water in my mouth while I was holding this guy, because it was extremely hot. He was sweating profusely. And so in the end, the ambulance arrived. He was got a cut in his head when he fell. So they had to look at him and they said a possible brain bleed. So that's when it all kind of went a bit crazy, you know. And
so basically, you dealt with a situation that was in front of you. In a way, actually, the vast majority of people think is heroic. Now, you stepped in, you prevented a woman from being hurt, you retrieved property, and you dealt with, let's face it, a thief.
Yeah.
And at this point, you should have been getting a medal.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen. Things got nasty. What happened next?
Yeah, things got quite nasty. I got arrested. Both of us got arrested. Now, I don't blame the police for that, because there is an injury to the guy's head. So I think it's protocol for the police to arrest both parties, bring them back to station. They do all the finger clips, the nail clippings, the fingerprinting, the facials, the photographs. Everything is done. Your clothes are taken off you as evidence. So you're stripped down to your shorts, basically. You're put in a cell. Now, I've never been in a cell in my life.
Yeah.
So this is all new to me. But it was just a natural occurrence for me to say, right, this is normal. Just go along with it. I must admit that the actual cop policeman who done the arrest that day, PC Craig Foster, I can't say enough about this guy. This guy actually followed up. He made numerous phone calls between me and he liaised between me and Kathleen and all that for the next 18 months, basically, just to let each other know that we're okay, you know.
All right, let's fast forward to the bit where your employers, let's say they didn't take your side, you ended up getting, despite everything you'd done, you got the chop.
I did.
Why?
I spent 6 days in hospital because I picked up a serious bug infection from his tooth. And I had 2 operations. I spent 6 days in ICU. And when I came out, they called me into a meeting in Wilson Junction and basically told me, you're no longer needed here. And we're releasing you without pay on the 15th of July.
And what explanation did they give?
I brought the bus company under disrepute. By their name would have been seen if anyone was walking by, and they have to record it. The name of the bus would have been there, and would have been a bad name for that sort of thing to happen.
Would it have been better for their name if you'd let the necklace be stolen? Would it have been better for the company's name if you'd allowed that assailant to get hold of the woman again?
I don't know, because they've never answered questions. You know, we asked last week. We're on a particular TV program. I think Friday. I'm not sure. And they asked that question, but I actually asked Metroline if they'd appear on the couch with me and answer 1 or 2 questions as to why they took this interpretation of a CCTV and made it out to be what it actually wasn't.
And let me guess, they weren't available for comment.
Yeah.
Apparently so. Apparently
funny
so.
That.
Yeah.
Okay, so look, I was in Nottingham at the weekend. Everybody's talking about this case.
Yeah.
Everybody publicly seems to be on your side. And you were telling me a moment ago, this has gone around the world and back, this story.
I'm actually getting messages from Irish Americans in Australia this morning. I got New Zealand last night. I got Spain. It's Belgium, Holland, all over Ireland. Front news coverage on RTE, news, papers, front pages back home. It's everywhere.
And obviously you got the boot, which meant you needed a few quid.
No earnings.
You, sir, you're his parliamentarian.
Yeah.
You set up a petition.
Yeah.
And the rest is history. There it is on screen. It's raised an astonishing sum of money, 128 grand.
Well, so it's 128,000 people have signed the petition.
I beg your pardon.
But almost £30,000 have been raised.
30 grand.
I'm not actually Mark's MP, but I'm the Shadow Justice Minister.
Got you.
And when I saw this case, he has got to meet with his MP, who also supports him. I think it just speaks to this wider issue of people who do the right thing, who stick up for people who need to be helped, getting penalised. And the criminal law doesn't allow that. If you step in and use rational and reasonable force to support someone, you're protected, as we found with Mark, who was... police completely exonerated him, but an employer has turned around and said, well, you know, we don't like it and you're going to be dismissed. And actually, Mark didn't mind. He said, if you had a slap on the wrist, perhaps, That'd be fair. But to sack someone who's done an heroic thing that the whole public have clearly shown they would get behind, they support. The irony that he was sacked because of the risk to Metroline's reputation, quite clearly the damage that's been done to their reputation by sacking Mark, it far outweighs any of that risk. And so I've just been delighted. We've had Mark in Parliament today. He's met the Speaker. He's met his own MP. He's seen Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservatives, later. MP stopping him as we were walking through Parliament, wanting to shake his hand and say, good for you.
It's astonishing. Mark?
Mark, well done. Very proud of you and what you did there.
Thank you.
For me, this absolutely smacks of what we see all too often now in corporations and companies where they are so risk-averse and it's all about potential reputational damage. But what's your concern about the way in which your former employer reacted here, about the potential chilling effect that could have on others, heroic individuals like yourself, who might think twice about actually intervening because of the potential consequences?
I think the company, I know they have their policies, and I think the problem I have is that I've read their policy, and I think their policy is contradictory. And I'll tell you why in a few words. If they're saying one side that you're responsible for the health, safety and upkeep and care of your customer, yet you can't step out of the cab, how do you do that?
Well, I'll tell you what, I think people all around the planet, and certainly people in this studio, think you're a hero of the very, very highest order. I want to shake that hand that did the right kind of damage to the right kind of person. You're an absolute legend. You know that, don't you?
Thank you.
You're an absolute legend. People just love people like you. You know, you have a word I can't say, to step in, take decisive action, protect the public. To lose your job is an outright disgrace. You should be getting a bravery award. And actually, I'm hoping that might still yet happen. I sincerely do hope that happens. You're in Parliament. You're going to meet Kemi Badenoch. You've been in GB News. Life's happening fast, and I want to make sure. Let's get that thing on screen again. If people want to donate a few quid into the coffers here, look, let's get this fella a few Guinnesses, a few hundred Guinea. Mark Hehir, thank you very much, and also the Conservative MP for Bexhill and Battle, Kieran Mullen. Gentlemen, I sincerely thank you for your time. Thanks for coming to see us today.
Can I just say one word? I personally would like to thank Kieran.
That's very kind.
Good.
Because Kieran was the one kind of MP who actually ran with this. He informed other MPs. He ran with the story. He believed in me, and I thank you very much for that.
Gentlemen, shake hands. If you want to have a hug, that's up to you. Thank you very much, lads. It's a pleasure to have your company. It really is. Thanks for coming to the studio today to see us. Now, a Metroline spokesperson said in response to this astonishing story, the tribunal has upheld the dismissal as fair. The claimants breached protocols designed to keep staff and passengers safe, which is our priority. Isn't that a contradictory statement if ever you have heard one? Thank you, gentlemen. It's an absolute pleasure. Now, we've got some breaking news for you now. Gordon Brown has written to the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, with information relevant to his investigation of Lord Mandelson's disclosure, of market-sensitive and confidential government information to Jeffrey Epstein. That's an astonishing development. Gordon Brown has got involved about the highly sensitive market-related data, which will surely be the central thrust now of a potential criminal investigation. A huge breaking news line. We'll have more than that throughout the rest of the show. First, finally, here's your headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. The top stories. Lord Mandelson is to step down from the House of Lords. It's been announced by the Lord Speaker this afternoon. It comes after the Cabinet Office referred material to the police after reviewing Jeffrey Epstein file documents that suggest alleged leaks of sensitive information by Lord Mandelson. Sarah Ferguson's charity Sarah's Trust is to close for the foreseeable future, just days after new documents detailed her friendship with Epstein. Among the newly released Justice Department files are emails which appeared to show the former Duchess of York remained in contact with Epstein while he was in prison and later visited his Palm Beach mansion with her daughters following his release. Being named in the files is not an allegation of wrongdoing. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage says the hospitality sector is on the edge of falling off a cliff as he announced a pledge to save Britain's pubs. The party has promised a 5-point plan to reduce VAT to 10% for the sector and change regulation to support landlords. And UK regulators have launched an investigation into X and XAI over alleged data protection breaches after Elon Musk's chatbot Grok was used to generate sexual deepfake images without consent. It comes as French police have raided X's Paris offices as part of the cybercrime probe, examining claims that biased algorithms may be distorting the platform. Those are the latest headlines. More in half an hour.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Hello, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. More rain and also some snow and ice to talk about as we go through the night and into tomorrow. Turning quite misty and murky across the south, but at least here overnight it should turn a bit drier as the rain tracks northwards. We're seeing it turn to snow over the hills and mountains of North Wales and northern England, even coming down to relatively low levels for a time, so not great on the roads. The snow continues to feed into eastern Scotland and becoming heavier across the Northern Isles. Also, this brisk wind continuing to bring rain into the eastern side of Scotland as well. But in the south, as I said, at least turning a bit drier, but it will be a misty, grey, murky start to the day. Still quite wet over northern England and much of Scotland. Still with the shelter, largely dry in western Scotland. But heavy rain on the coast, snow inland across eastern Scotland, continuing to cause some problems. The total's really starting to build up here, and that wind blowing the snow around. Could well be an icy start over the higher ground of North Wales and parts of northern England, with a mixture of rain and hill snow coming in here. But much of the south, much drier than today. And although it will start pretty drab, grey, misty, murky, should get brighter as the day goes on. Damp start for Northern Ireland, the rain edging northwards. Soggy day for the central belt. In eastern Scotland in particular, further snow over the hills and still a brisk and cold wind blowing here. But with some brightness in the south, feeling a lot milder than today, like as you get to double figures across some parts of southern England, maybe South Wales, with a bit of afternoon sunshine. Don't get used to it though, because look, more cloud and rain spreading its way up from France, and that continues to track north on Thursday. So again, more wet weather for England and Wales, turning again to snow perhaps over the hills of northern England, still snowing over the hills of eastern Scotland. And again, that cold wind blowing on those North Sea coasts throughout. The Met Office warnings are on the Met Office website.
Thank you, Britain, for helping us reach 10 million followers across social media. We are truly honoured to have your trust, one follower at a time.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. The M90 northbound off-slip at Junction 1C is closed for maintenance. In Northamptonshire, the A14 eastbound from the M1 Catthorpe interchange to Junction 1 has a crash, closing one of two lanes, causing hour-long delays. In Essex, the M11 southbound between Junction 8 and Junction 7A has an incident involving multiple vehicles, closing two of three lanes with about an hour delay. In Surrey, the A3 northbound between the A322 and A3100 has an accident with 10-minute delays. And on the trains, Great Western Railway and Elna routes are disrupted. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Welcome back. It is 4:42. Couldn't hear the language there, but in the break, I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News. Now, major breaking news, a huge development in the Mandelson story. Gordon Brown has written to the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, with information relevant to his investigation of Lord Mandelson's disclosure of market-sensitive and confidential government information to Jeffrey Epstein. That's a huge breaking news story, and I'm here to discuss that. Chris Hope, our political editor, is about to Hope interview. But before that, I'm joined in the studio by the chief political commentator at the iPaper, Kitty Donaldson. Kitty, thank you. Your first time in the studio here. It's a pleasure to have your company. What a day. What an absolutely huge day. Now, Mandelson, he's toast. He's toast. He's going to lose his title, more or less. But the huge story, surely, is the financial one. Yep. The sensitive information, insider information, very, very privileged governmental information passed on to Jeffrey Epstein, a billionaire, and who knows who else.
Yeah.
Information that could have been used against markets, against currencies, against entire nations to make millions and millions of pounds.
Yeah.
And now Gordon Brown's waded in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and revenge is a dish best served cold, isn't it? I mean, Gordon Brown and Peter Mandelson have long been, if not enemies, then frenemies, because ever since Gordon asked Peter Mandelson to back him for the party leadership back in the 90s, and he said no, he's backing Tony Blair. So there's a long history between the two, but I think this particularly speaks to something that Gordon Brown would get incredibly angry about. Don't forget that Gordon Brown had just come out of dealing with the financial crisis in 2008, only then to find out in the last, few months or so that he had a leak in his government, and he'd asked the Cabinet Secretary, Gordon Brown had asked the Cabinet Secretary to look into this, and the Cabinet Secretary came back and said, oh, we're not sure, we haven't found anything, only for these revelations to come out via the US. So it must be deeply irritating for Gordon Brown to have known something was going on and then to be proved right in such a way.
Gordon Brown, of course, has always been held partly responsible for the financial crash in 2008, selling gold. His reputation took a battering at that time.
Yeah.
And, he will be looking to, in a sense, portray himself now as one of the good guys, trying to rectify this historical injustice, potentially, of this insider information being leaked. And this could be a truly phenomenal transatlantic scandal involving the FBI, the Metropolitan Police, who made what money, out of what information. It's a huge story.
Yes, absolutely. And I suspect the Met might refer it on to the City of London Police, who are experts in financial crime, rather than the Met. I think what's also quite interesting is that it's actually quite hard under current legislation to prosecute on this. There's the Nolan principles of conduct in public life, which all ministers are expected to abide by, and that is basically being proper in what you do. And then there's misconduct in a public office, but that law is quite sort of vague in its drafting. I mean, the Prime Minister is trying to get the Hillsborough law onto the statute books, which would require people in public office to have a duty of candour, but that's not on the statute books yet, and I don't think you could prosecute Peter Mandelson under that retrospectively. So we're in a situation now where how is he charged? Is it going to go to, will it pass the bar for evidence in order to bring a prosecution? And that's where we're at right now.
Kitty Donaldson, what a day to join us in the studio for your first time. Thanks for your company. Chris Hope, revenge, as Kitty said, is a dish best served up cold. Mandelson and Gordon Brown, there's certainly history. Now it's taking a dramatic turn this afternoon.
Yes, I mean, they did come together, of course, after he was a European Union Commissioner, brought back into Gordon Brown's government in 2008, to some surprise at the time. I think he feels extremely let down. This statement released moments ago from Gordon Brown to the Press Association confirms he's written to Mark Rowley, who's a Met Police Commissioner, with information he says relevant to the investigation of Lord Mandelson's disclosure of market-sensitive and confidential government information to Jeffrey Epstein. Gordon Brown calls this an inexcusable and unpatriotic act at a time when the whole government and country will attempt to address the global financial crisis that was damaging so many livelihoods. He has now sent some marked correspondence between himself and the Cabinet Secretary last year, and I've also passed over information arising from that may be important in this current investigation. So, as we know, Gordon Brown did write to the Cabinet Secretary wondering whether any leak between Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein when elements of Royal Bank of Scotland was sold to JP Morgan. Yeah. This is a long time ago, but it really is burning fresh for Gordon Brown.
Gordon Brown there, unpatriotic, damaging, wow. So much more to talk about. Please, Kitty, stick with us. Chris, stick with us. Stay tuned and we'll continue this discussion on this huge breaking news story that Gordon Brown has written to the Metropolitan Police about Lord Mandelson. And we're still waiting for Donald Trump to take the Colombian president. Anything can happen. Don't go anywhere. This is GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The Football Safety app is obviously, does exactly what it says on the tin.
You're going to a football match, and you got to remember, football doesn't start when you're actually in the stadium. It starts when you leave your house and you're going to a game. So you can report in stuff, whether you're on a train, whether you're travelling, whether you're walking to a stadium, anything that's happening in and around you. We all know that sometimes it can get a bit rowdy on the trains. I've been there before, stuck on the train before, and sometimes you struggle to report it. And this is a way of reporting what's going on and reporting it to police.
And Emile, have you ever been a victim of all of this?
Well, I've obviously had racial abuse at stadiums while playing, etc.
You know, you know what's sad? The fact that you said obviously.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's just awful that it's obviously.
The interesting thing with that is I made my debut at 17. And we know what's going on, we see it, I've had it. And by the time I was finished, when I was playing, I was thinking, by the time I finish playing, it will change. It probably hasn't, it's probably just morphed into something else. We have the ability to get a hold of anyone, any time in our hands, with our mobile phones, with social media, with the social media companies. So it's just morphed into something else where we get a lot of abuse. We see it with the lads playing in the missing penalties, and then suddenly they're getting abused, etc. But that's still happening in the stadium, and it's not just racial abuse, it's bullying, it's sexual harassment, it's all sorts of harassment.
And all these things would qualify to be reported.
in the app. You basically just report, you can just click a button and it's instant.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Huge breaking news this hour. Gordon Brown, the former Prime Minister, of course, has written to the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, with information relevant to his investigation of Lord Mandelson's disclosure of market-sensitive and confidential government information to Jeffrey Epstein. The scandal just keeps growing. I'm joined in the studio by GB News political editor Chris Hope and also the chief political commentator at the iPaper, Kitty Donaldson. Kitty, thank you for joining us again. I wanted to speak with you earlier today. I saw you wrote an excellent piece talking about the paper trail. Who's going to cop the blame for this? Because let's face it, there was a strategic, amateurish lack of vetting of Mandy. He was known to be a cavalier choice. And you say that you feel there could be a sacrificial lamb. Who might that be?
It wasn't my quote, it was a quote from a Labour MP, actually, who was saying that to me yesterday. There have been some chatter around about what happens after May, when the Labour Party is expected to do fairly badly in Scotland, Wales and in local elections in England. So people have been sort of talking about how does Keir Starmer move on from it? Could he have a reshuffle? And that people are saying, well, no, not really. He hasn't got the authority to do a reshuffle. So what's the alternative? And so does he have to sacrifice something or somebody? And then we got all these revelations about Peter Mandelson over the weekend, which sort of accelerated these conversations yesterday in Westminster. And people were saying, well, someone's got to be held responsible for the appointment. And so all fingers seem to point back to Morgan McSweeney, who is Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff, number 10, and the protégé of Lord Mandelson. And so Labour MPs who had already been, quite rude about Morgan McSweeney in lots of ways, there's kind of animosity in the Labour Party because Morgan McSweeney is seen as to the right of the party. So lots of people on the soft left don't like him politically, but also because there's been this kind of stranglehold on communications and the fact that they're seen as out of touch, and there's a kind of mutual antipathy between Labour MPs and number 10.
That might satiate the backbenchers. It might satiate the left. Will it wash with the electorate? Or does Sir Keir Starmer just portray himself some kind of Teflon Don who nothing ever seems to stop in his intro? Why not?
Well, eventually it may get back to Sir Keir Starmer, but I think there are other people who will fall before him. And also, yes, everyone knew what Lord Mandelson was like. I mean, he was sacked twice from the previous Labour government. But equally, I don't think Sir Keir Starmer can be blamed for trying to think the best of somebody who then turned out to be up to his neck with such a ghastly human being.
But somebody with an appetite for luxury, someone with an appetite for the lifestyle, the hobnobbing, Mandelson, the ultimate mover. Why is anybody surprised? And so therefore, why is Sir Keir Starmer surprised that this has happened?
Yes, but it was always a risk-reward ratio, wasn't it, when they appointed him? They knew there were risks attached to sending him to Washington. They knew that, but they judged at the time that it was worth the risk because of the circles he moved in.
And a former trade commissioner for the European Union, the trade deal was so important. He was someone who could mix with rich people, mixed vaguely in the circles of probably Donald Trump when he was back in New York. Number 10 brief us today off the record. The PM has full confidence in Morgan McSweeney, but I do think the worry might take away the focus on Reform UK, and that's a bad thing for Keir Starmer. OK, thank you very much. Kitty Donaldson, Chief Political Commentator at the iPaper. Thanks for your company today. Chris Ho, we've got plenty more to come in the following hour. We'll be continuing, of course, this huge discussion on the breaking news story that Gordon Brown has written to the Chief of the Metropolitan Police about Lord Mandelson. The scandal gets bigger by the minute. That's next on GB News.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. More rain and also some snow and ice to talk about as we go through the night and into tomorrow. Turning quite misty and murky across the south, but at least here overnight it should turn a bit drier as the rain tracks northwards. We're seeing it turn to snow over the hills and mountains of North Wales and northern England, even coming down to relatively low levels for a time, so not great on the roads. The snow continues to feed into eastern Scotland and becoming heavier across the Northern Isles. Also, this brisk wind continuing to bring rain into the eastern side of Scotland as well. But in the south, as I said, at least turning a bit drier. But it will be a misty, grey, murky start to the day. Still quite wet over northern England and much of Scotland. Still with a shelter, largely dry in western Scotland. But heavy rain on the coast, snow inland across eastern Scotland, continuing to cause some problems. The total's really starting to build up here, and that wind blowing the snow around. Could well be an icy start over the higher ground of North Wales and parts of northern England, with a mixture of rain and hill snow coming in here. But much of the south, much drier than today. And although it will start pretty drab, grey, misty, murky, should get brighter as the day goes on. Damp start for Northern Ireland, the rain edging northwards. Soggy day for the central belt. In eastern Scotland in particular, further snow over the hills and still a brisk and cold wind blowing here. But with some brightness in the south, feeling a lot milder than today, like as you get to double figures across some parts of southern England, maybe South Wales, with a bit of afternoon sunshine. Don't get used to it though, because look, more cloud and rain spreading its way up from France, and that continues to track north on Thursday. So again, more wet weather for England and Wales, turning again to snow perhaps over the hills of northern England, still snowing over the hills of eastern Scotland. And again, that cold wind blowing on those North Sea coasts throughout. The Met Office warnings are on the Met Office website.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for making GB News Radio such a huge success. Whether you're in the car, on the go, or listening at home, thank you for choosing us as your radio station.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. The M90 northbound off-slip at junction 1C is closed for essential roadworks. There is congestion on the A470 northbound at Nantgarve by the off-slip. In Northamptonshire, the A14 eastbound from the M1 Catthorpe interchange to junction 1 has a crash with one lane shut and delays of around an hour. In Essex, the M11 southbound between junction 8 and junction 7A has an incident with 2 lanes blocked and long queues. And on the trains, Great Western Railway has disruption on some routes. And Elna is disrupted between Arbroath and Aberdeen. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
This year, the adventure of a lifetime could be on us. Courtesy of Riviera Travel, there's a terrific £10,000 holiday for two to be won. Choose from over 30 worldwide destinations like Thailand, South Africa, New Zealand or even Sri Lanka. We'll also boost your bank account with a fabulous £30,000 in tax-free cash.
For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB19 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 27th of February. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, this is Jubes & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here to GB News, Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Very, very good afternoon to you. Just another quiet day in politics. It's 5 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live across the UK. All the very latest news, debate and analysis all the way through until 6 p.m. We've got a huge show ahead of us and here's what's on your menu.
Given the public interest and for the convenience of the House, I decided to inform the House that the Clerk of the Parliament has today received notification from Lord Mandelson of his intention to retire from the House, effective from 4th February. I will formally notify this to the House tomorrow in the usual way.
Yes, Peter Mandelson is set to step down from the House of Lords following his latest revelations about his ties to the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, and a huge development in this past hour. Now, Gordon Brown, the former Prime Minister, of course, has written to the Metropolitan Police Chief, Sir Mark Rowley, about him. We'll have all of the latest reaction of this huge scandal at the heart of Westminster. And ministers say they fear Southport-style riots after locals continue to protest, and up to 540 illegal immigrants being dropped onto the community of Crowborough. Well, today's show I'll be joined by the area's defiant MP, plus the Police and Crime Commissioner for the area, who claims she's been slammed for speaking the truth. And live pictures there on your screen of the White House any moment now. After months of escalating tensions and high drama, Donald Trump will meet Colombia's President Gustavo Petro. We'll bring you all of that live. Anything can happen in the next hour. And after a cherished statue of Britain's youngest ever world boxing champion was stolen by scum thieves, a campaign to retrieve it and also to nick the yobs has gone viral. On today's show, I'll be joined by the emotional grandson of the boxing hero Teddy Baldock, who hopes to help cops KO the cons and retrieve the statue before it's melted down for scrap. That's all coming on today's show. Welcome to the show. The Peter Mandelson scandal simply gets bigger and bigger and bigger. This afternoon, we hear Lord Mandelson is losing his title, but that's just the start of it. The bigger story, surely, is the financial story. Privileged information, sensitive, inside information about the bailout of the Eurozone, that information passed on to Jeffrey Epstein, a billionaire with a multitude of billionaire friends, insider information that could have been leveraged to make millions and millions and millions of dollars potentially. A scandal that could go across the Atlantic, a scandal now that has drawn in Gordon Brown. He's contacted the Metropolitan Police with more information of a scandal that's simply enveloping all of Westminster. We'll have all the latest analysis in the studio from Mark White, from Chris Hope, and experts across the panel. Get in touch the usual way. GBNews.com/You'll Say is the way to do so. Use the QR code on your screens now. But now let's get to your headlines on a huge day in politics. Here's Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. The top stories. Former Prime Minister Gordon Brown has written to the Metropolitan Police Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley with information relevant to his investigation of Lord Mandelson's disclosure of market-sensitive and confidential government information to paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein. Peter Mandelson is set to step down as a member of the House of Lords following the latest revelations about his relationship with Epstein.
Given the public interest and for the convenience of the House, I decided to inform the House that the Clerk of the Parliament has today received notification from Lord Mandelson of his intention to retire from the House, effective from 4th February. I will formally notify this to the House tomorrow in the usual way.
A Downing Street spokesperson says it's right that Lord Mandelson is quitting the House of Lords, adding, as the Prime Minister said this morning, he let his country down. Earlier, the Cabinet Office said it referred material to the police after reviewing Epstein file documents that suggest alleged leaks of sensitive information by Mandelson. Emails suggest he forwarded internal government information to Epstein when he was the business secretary in 2009. Lord Mandelson has denied wrongdoing. Jeff Hoon, who served alongside Peter Mandelson in government, spoke today.
We thought it all a little strange that Peter moved in such circles because, as you say, wasn't something that you would necessarily expect of a Labour politician. I really do feel very strongly that a cabinet minister clearly involving third parties, outsiders, in trying to undermine what was government policy set out by Alistair Darling at the time is really unacceptable. And I hope that this is just the tip of the iceberg, but I am afraid that perhaps there's more to come.
Sarah Ferguson's charity Sarah's Trust is set to close for the foreseeable future just days after new documents detailed her friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. Among the newly released Justice Department files are emails which appear to show the former Duchess of York remained in contact with Epstein while he was in prison and later visited his Palm Beach mansion with her daughters following his release. A spokesperson says the decision to close the charity had been under discussion for months. Being named in the Epstein files is not an allegation of wrongdoing. In other news, the Reform UK leader Nigel Farage says the hospitality sector is on the edge of falling off a cliff as he announced a pledge to save Britain's pubs. The party has promised a 5-point plan to reduce VAT to 10% for the hospitality sector, scrap the employer national insurance increase for hospitality businesses, cut beer duty by 10%, implement staggered business rate abolition for pubs and change regulation to support landlords. Mr Farage told a press conference today what is happening to our pubs, what's happening to our hospitality sector is little short of a disaster. Breaking news this hour, police say a light aircraft has crashed in Greater Manchester. 2 people are believed to have been on board the plane. The crash happened in the Littleborough area and emergency services are still at the scene. There are reports that the aircraft which crashed is a Cirrus SR-20, a plane which is fitted with a parachute system designed to deploy in an emergency. The UK's data watchdog has opened a formal investigation into X and XAI over concerns the AI chatbot Grok was used to create sexual deepfake images without consent. The Information Commissioner's Office says it's examining whether Elon Musk's companies breached UK data protection law, particularly around safeguards to protect personal data. It follows a separate investigation by Ofcom launched earlier this year after Grok generated sexualised images, including of real people. The ICO warns losing control of personal data in this way can cause serious harm, especially where children are involved, and says enforcement action will follow if the law has been broken. And in France, police have raided the headquarters of social media giant X as part of a criminal investigation into suspected offences including unlawful data extraction and potential links to child sexual abuse material. Prosecutors say they're examining whether the company broke the law across multiple areas, including the distribution of illegal images, sexual deepfakes and organised data fraud. Elon Musk and former X chief executive have both been summoned to hearings in April. X has previously dismissed the investigation as politically motivated, and they say it's an attack on free speech. The company has not yet commented on today's raids. Those are the latest headlines for now. There's more from me in half an hour.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.3671 and €1.1597. The price of gold is £3,593 and 39 pence per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is currently at 10,290 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Welcome to the show. Let's start with that huge breaking news today. The scandal that's enveloping Westminster. Lord Mandelson is to step down from the House of Lords and to add to the increasing controversy. The former Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, he's waded in and written to the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, with the statement. He's saying, with information relevant to his investigation of Lord Mandelson's disclosure of market-sensitive and confidential government information to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, Mr. Brown said in a statement, I've today written to the Metropolitan Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, with information relevant to his investigation of Lord Mandelson's disclosure of market-sensitive and confidential government information to the American financier Jeffrey Epstein, in an inexcusable and unpatriotic act at a time when the whole government and country were attempting to address the global financial crisis that was damaging so many livelihoods. He went on. I've sent some more correspondence exchanged between myself and the Cabinet Secretary last year. I've also passed over information arising from it that may be important in his current investigation. I have included the letter I sent in September 2025 asking the Cabinet Secretary to investigate the veracity of information contained in the Epstein papers regarding the sale of assets arising from the banking collapse and communications about them between Lord Mandelson and Mr. Epstein. This is explosive. Mr. Brown continues. I've also included the November 2026 response from the Cabinet Secretary, who said about this, no records, information or correspondence from Lord Mandelson's mailbox could be found. He continues. Having drawn their attention to relevant evidence, the matter now rests in the hands of the police. That is a political bombshell. Let's try and pick over the bones of that. I'm now joined in the studio by GB News' political editor, Chris Hope, and our home and security editor, Mark White. Mark, I'm going to come to you first, if I may, this hour. In the previous hour, you were saying that your intel was saying this now is continuing apace in terms of the criminal investigation into who know what about the financial information. Now Gordon Brown has waded in. This has completely exploded.
Yeah, I was told that things would move pretty quickly this afternoon into the early evening, and this is a stunning intervention by the former Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, absolutely eviscerating, in the words he has, for Peter Mandelson. And now, of course, lots of other information that Sir Mark Rowley, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, and his team of investigators have before them. What they have to do at the moment, they're involved in what's described as a scoping exercise, really, not to determine, whether there is a case that they need to prove here, but certainly that they have the facts that are worth investigating. And absolutely, on Gordon Brown's letter alone, with the evidence he's passed to them, there's enough to investigate. But there's other information that has been passed throughout the day from the Cabinet Office as well to Sir Mark Rowley. So expect in the next hour or so an announcement that I believe will be a formal investigation into Peter Mandelson launched by Scotland Yard detectives, and then we could be going into uncharted territory in terms of where that investigation might lead those detectives and indeed law enforcement partners from around the globe, because there's no doubt, in the sense that Jeffrey Epstein was based overseas. Many of the people he dealt with were based overseas. This will be a multinational investigation that could involve lots of other entities and individuals who may have been in some way involved in the leaking of information from Peter Mandelson, used perhaps for financial gain. So it could be a very lengthy and explosive investigation, there's no doubt.
This is so damaging for Labour, because Labour lost their reputation for economic competency in that financial crisis. The Tories exploited it, didn't they? And to have senior figures at the top of that administration passing on information that was valuable to those friends in high places is a disaster. It undermines both that record and also, I think, on the attacks Labour make on the Tories over this COVID VIP lane, because they're all at it apparently, and that's what Keir Starmer told Cabinet today.
New Labour, as it was then, Chris Oakmont-White, simply imploding before our very eyes. And I just want to make the point again, the notion of Lord Mandelson being stripped of his title, I think is chicken feed. It's a sideshow. It's almost immaterial in this. This is now about the Prime Minister of the time, that man there, Gordon Brown, sharing information about a multi-billion euro bailout of the Eurozone, and that was given to Lord Mandelson. We now know for certain that was passed on to Jeffrey Epstein, a billionaire. How many billionaires did he know? How many financiers? That information, even a minute to have an advance notice on a market, you could make huge sums of money betting against currencies, betting against government bonds, shorting the market, spiralling the market, people losing millions of pounds, people gaining millions of pounds. As you say, Mark White, this could go both sides of the Atlantic with certainty, it would seem, but who knows elsewhere? Switzerland? I mean, the sky's the limit. Anybody, any one of a number of rich people could be involved in this. It's a gigantic scandal, Mark White.
I think we've only scratched the surface in terms of, where we go in, not even just the depth of individual investigations, such as the investigation into the banking crisis and that particular set of allegations. Remember, there's the allegations as well around the banker bonuses, the allegations as well about the impending resignation of Gordon Brown. All of those, I think, are just a microcosm, potentially, of the kind of information that Peter Mandelson may have been leaking to Jeffrey Epstein. So it could be a much, much wider investigation as it progresses.
Chris, I think you raised a very, very important point about this is the kind of scandal. Now, when you did the expenses scandal, the Telegraph, excellent pioneering work. The grubby minutiae of the bits and bobs that MPs were claiming brought down really the entire reputations, parliamentary parties, you could say. The erosion of public trust in politicians on the floor. This could make that look like chicken feed.
Yeah, well, that was all individuals, I think, acting. The information was revealed because we had access to how they communicated with the Fees Office. In a similar way, this is Lord Mandelson talking to his clearly a financial benefactor who supported him financially. Yeah, Keir Starmer can see that. He came in, didn't he? He wants to tread lightly on us in a government. He was different from the Tories. This says they're all the same. And it was said today by Sir Keir Starmer to his top team in the Cabinet. He said simply, people don't look at us as individuals. All they see is politicians enriching themselves. He said it was gobsmacking, he said, that a politician doesn't remember if they receive tens of thousands of pounds. Those figures, of course, are not remembered by Lord Mandelson, but he said that was gobsmacking. And I think Sir Keir Starmer is acting quickly. The Met Police investigation, if were one to happen, will help the government put a lid on this, because he told his top group of politicians, we are nowhere near the end of this.
It's that word that the Labour Party have long thrown at the Conservatives, sleaze.
Yep.
Sleaze is the word that they threw at the Conservatives endlessly for years. This is sleaze on steroids.
It is. I mean, it is sleaze. It is, of course, in the last Labour government, before the Tories, before the coalition government, before the Lib Dems, a long time ago. Again, I wonder why they're not looking at Mandelson's record as ambassador. There's no suggestion, as far as we know, he did anything wrong. But if he is this bad penny, this bad apple, as that MP was telling us, why not check that nothing happened when he was ambassador in Washington? And why not? Because that put it right back on Keir Starmer.
Chris, so the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Davey, has just spoken out on this scandal around Mandelson. Let's take a listen.
We support the police investigation, but beyond that, I think we're going to need a public inquiry. The threat to national security that Lord Mandelson posed, giving away secrets to someone who could benefit at a time when our country was in grave peril, was quite outrageous. So let the criminal investigation happen first, but we're going to need a public inquiry into national security and also into the British victims of Jeffrey Epstein.
And what purpose would that solve? Because a lot of people say public inquiries take a long time and don't really achieve that much. Why do you think it needs that sort of inquiry?
Well, from the concerns and the rights of the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, who are British, but to national security, I think we do need an inquiry. I don't want it to get in the way of the police investigation. We need crimes have to be investigated first. But we have to learn from this. Who knew in Whitehall? And it also links to the judgment of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister surely shouldn't have appointed Lord Mandelson to be the British ambassador to the United States. And if he hadn't got all the information, who failed to give it to him? So this is a problem that goes to the heart of government, the heart of this government, heart of past governments, and to our national security. So it absolutely requires a public inquiry.
It sounds though, from what you've just said, that you think the Prime Minister should give evidence to that inquiry. Who do you think are the key people that need to give evidence to that inquiry?
Well, there'll be senior civil servants, people in number 10, the Prime Minister's Chief Advisor, Morgan McSweeney, and there may be others. But until we get this properly investigated, and in this case, not the criminal investigation which Lord Mandelson must face, but an investigation to make sure we learn the lessons. And people who have really done our country a disservice are held to account.
You didn't say the Prime Minister should give evidence to the inquiry. Do you think he should give evidence to the public inquiry?
Well, if we get the public inquiry that Liberal Democrats are calling for, clearly the Prime Minister will be someone who should go before it and answer questions. He has to be held to account for his decision to appoint Lord Mandelson to the British ambassador to the United States. But we also, above all, need to learn the lessons of national security. How come the Deputy Prime Minister, when Gordon Brown was Prime Minister, was feeding information to an American who turned out is a vile paedophile and a sex trafficker? You know, it's quite outrageous, and people will be quite disgusted by it. The public trust in our democratic institutions is already at a low level. We have to show to the people that we're taking this seriously, and people will be held to account and heads will roll where wrong has happened.
That's Ed Davey there, the leader of the Lib Dems, calling for a public inquiry. Mark White had a few choice words to say while Ed Davey was speaking there. Surely a public inquiry is the wrong tool.
I just think that is not a serious intervention. You know, a public inquiry that takes years, that never really gets to the bottom of what people want uncovered. You can get no finer investigation in terms of the forensic detail than a criminal investigation going to all parts where they need to go to, internationally, with international law enforcement partners. That's what's required. It's quicker, and then you'll get, hopefully, to the bottom of exactly what's gone on. There should be no need for that public inquiry that he wants to have. That's just a sideshow.
And what's the actual point of it? I mean, the rape gang public inquiry had a purpose. It was looking at systemic failures across police forces, across social services. That's why that does fit the reason why we're having one. I don't see why this works at all. And as Mark says, the powers the police have are far in excess anyway of what the judge would have in a judge-led inquiry.
And I think actually things have just moved on a pace. You know, I think Ed Davey there just seemed like yesterday's man. Pardon if that's the way I feel. It's moved on a pace because now Gordon Brown has said, actually, Gordon Brown's recognised the paper trail here. He gave Mandelson insider information about a multi-billion euro bailout of the Eurozone, which impacted all of those member states, particularly vulnerable nations. Greece still hasn't recovered from that bailout. Spain, record youth unemployment, still to this day. How much money was betted against those currencies? How much against those bonds, the price of which is almost incalculable? More why? This is like the realms of the FBI. It needs to be a proper surgical seizure with no prisoners taken, apolitical. Screw public inquiries.
And that's why, you know, with the Metropolitan Police now involved, and as I say, we're expecting that within the next hour or so, we will get that formal announcement that a formal, proper investigation is underway into Peter Mandelson. And at that point, there's no doubt that the tentacles of this investigation will take them far and wide, certainly across the Atlantic. And you can expect that the FBI, with all of the resources and the expertise that they have in investigating financial crime, will bring that to bear on behalf of the Metropolitan Police as well.
Chris Hope, you keep talking about, though, we need to cast an eye over what Mandelson did as the ambassador to the United States while in office recently. I wonder, actually, if another point here is that Donald Trump could be furious about this. This is another scandal, you know, brought to American soil. If it starts to involve the FBI, if it starts to look into the paper trail, the grubby world of high finance and crashing countries' economies to make a few quid at the expense of ordinary taxpayers, it becomes a horrible, horrible scandal. And you know, that's a scandal brought to Donald Trump's door by Keir Starmer's appointment of Peter Mandelson.
Yeah, of course, he was very nice about Peter Mandelson about a year ago or so, and then said, I think he doesn't remember who he was in that press conference in I think it was in Chequers. So, yeah, the email will feel let down. In the same way, I think, clearly, Gordon Brown feels let down. He brought in Peter Mandelson to government. He made his name on his response, was well regarded to the financial crisis. It's now been undermined by him there. Also, I'm watching America quite closely. We're moving quite fast in this country. Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton are now going to give evidence to the House inquiry into these files. That means no one else can resist. Once the ex-president has gone there, everyone else piles in. There might be some more issues in the States, I think, but currently the UK is leading the way in trying to flush out what happened.
The UK is also leading the way in the scandal, setting the tempo of the scandal. And this was meant to take down Donald Trump. Isn't it astonishing? It's just flame-throwing Peter Mandelson and Keir Starmer been dragged into the web.
Just to further muddy the waters, it's worth maybe exploring the fact that this doesn't necessarily, at the end of the day, just only involve financial wrongdoing. We could be looking at the geopolitics of it because there are, you know, quite a number of people who are looking very suspiciously at Jeffrey Epstein's links to the Russians, for instance. How much were they involved in what was passed on by the likes of Peter Mandelson to Jeffrey Epstein? That's not just financial crimes. That's crimes, you know, of high treason.
Gentlemen, what a quiet day in politics it's been. Chris Hope might have been sensational all day now. Don't go anywhere, because I'll be joined in the moment in the studio by the fearless campaigner, the beautiful Emma Webber, head of the Nottingham attack inquiry. That's beginning soon. We need to get justice for the victims of Valdo Callaghan. That's next here on GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, DC.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray. Are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines. The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos. What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back. It's 5:29. I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by Emma Webber, of course, whose son Barnaby was tragically killed by the paranoid schizophrenic psychopath. Is demanding more rights for victims. She's calling for the Victims and Courts Bill to be strengthened over fears that they will be excluded from decisions concerning offenders. Well, I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by Emma Webber and also by the founder of the 100 Families charity, the fearless campaigner Judy and Hendy. Welcome to you both. Emma, let's start. It's always an absolute pleasure, my darling,
Hello.
to have your company. It sincerely
nice to
is.
see you. Yeah.
Tell us about your ongoing battle. You're a fearless campaign. What's the latest?
Yeah, I'm fearless too. I don't know if it's fearless or stupid, but it's just like everything's a fight all the time, isn't it? I don't think I've ever been in here and not said, well, this is what we're battling for. And so we met with Baroness Levitt today, the House of Lords. The Victim and Courts Bill is about to pass through the House of Lords. And, you know, I think we've got the public inquiry starting in a little under 3 weeks. The very last thing I feel like doing at the moment or feel like I should be doing is campaigning on a broader spectrum, because I'm trying to address all the failures that happen to us. But if we don't address this now, and if we don't fight really hard and appeal really hard for amendment that Julian's brought forward to this bill, you know, we're going to have, as victims of mental health crimes, we're just going to be continued to be silenced and ignored, disrespected. And overlooked, and that cannot happen. It's morally reprehensible what's happening, and that's what we've been in today.
The Victims and Courts Bill gives rights to hospital managers to decide how much information victims should have without any right of consulting us, without having to explain their decisions, and without giving us any right to appeal. We say that's not right. You know, the Victims and Courts Bill should have rights for victims rather than offenders.
Feels like
don't
an
think that's
anti-victims
unreasonable.
bill.
And Julian, of course, your charity, 100 Families, is precisely because the 100 Families, your father was taken by a psychopath. He shouldn't have been out.
He shouldn't have been out. His family were raising concerns about him beforehand. He was well known to mental health services. He had paranoid schizophrenia, took a lot of drugs. You know, my dad's death was completely avoidable. After it happened, I used to be a journalist. You know, I used to make documentary films, and I found out the man. You know, I was trying to find information about how this could have happened, and the walls went up, and I couldn't find out any information at all. And that's why I set up 100 Families to try and support families and work with them to try and make sure that victims' rights are recognised, and as far as possible, these things can't happen again.
And the co-tragedies, in a sense, have made you now allies. You often say, you know, Emma, you're now working alongside people that you're friends with, colleagues with, because of this unimaginable terror that happened to you. But you've taken that and you've made it into something fearsome and something which I don't think the government is going to be able to ignore.
No, we have to make it our jobs to not be ignored anymore. And it's I think the most important thing to illustrate is that we are not an exception. We are not unusual. In our case, and the failures across every single agency, every single organisation and agency failed over multiple years. But we happen to be the family that it was in the spotlight. It had public interest and great media support. But you know, it's not just Barney, Grace and Ian. This is such a big problem, and it's hard to say and isolate what we're fighting for sometimes because it's so much. And so much is wrong with our criminal justice system. So much is wrong, obviously, with our National Health Service. But we have to work and we have to campaign on these small changes, these steps, because by winning those battles, you will win the war.
But you've already had a significant victory by stopping the payments of benefits to people in. It's just mind-blowing to most people, Julian, tuning into the show, that you can be a killer, a murderer, be in a mental health hospital, not a prison, and be being paid benefits.
Up to £800 a month.
Yeah, which can be then multiple tens of thousands upon your release. A nice little nest egg for a killer. That's been stopped because of you guys. That's a huge victory.
The government have announced it. They're going to have a consultation, so we wait to see what comes out.
It should be 12 weeks, and we're 2 weeks in. Yeah, but Julian put the fear of God into me today when you said that the Royal College of Psychiatrists are strongly pushing back.
That's insane, Paul.
It is insane, and I shall be writing to the President, and she will be getting a letter from me tomorrow because it's morally reprehensible.
As well as that, what happens next?
Well, we're waiting for the public inquiry. The public inquiry starts in February the 23rd. We will watch that with great interest. I mean, we hope it does the right thing and gets some justice for all our families, not only the Nottingham families, but for all the families who don't have such a strong voice as Emma has.
Well, you've got a strong voice and you're always welcome to shout from this studio. You know that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Emma Webber, Julian, thank you very much for coming in and seeing us today, and the very best with the campaign. Please don't be strangers. You know you've got friends here in Westminster. Thank you to you both, and love to the family.
Thanks.
Lots more still to come between now and 6 o'clock, including ministers say they fear Southport-style riots after locals continue to protest, with up to 540 illegal immigrants being dumped on them in Crowborough. They had no say, but now they've got a voice here on GB News, with Britain's #1 news channel.
Hello, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. More rain and also some snow and ice to talk about as we go through the night and into tomorrow. Turning quite misty and murky across the south, but at least here overnight it should turn a bit drier as the rain tracks northwards. We're seeing it turn to snow over the hills and mountains of North Wales and northern England, even coming down to relatively low levels for a time, so not great on the roads. The snow continues to feed into eastern Scotland and becoming heavier across the Northern Isles. Also, this brisk wind continuing to bring rain into the eastern side of Scotland as well. But in the south, as I said, at least turning a bit drier. But it will be a misty, grey, murky start to the day. Still quite wet over northern England and much of Scotland. Still with a shelter, largely dry in western Scotland. But heavy rain on the coast, snow inland across eastern Scotland, continuing to cause some problems. The total's really starting to build up here, and that wind blowing the snow around. Could well be an icy start over the higher ground of North Wales and parts of northern England, with a mixture of rain and hill snow coming in here. But much of the south, much drier than today. And although it will start pretty drab, grey, misty, murky, should get brighter as the day goes on. Damp start for Northern Ireland, the rain edging northwards. Soggy day for the central belt. In eastern Scotland in particular, further snow over the hills and still a brisk and cold wind blowing here. But with some brightness in the south, feeling a lot milder than today, like as you get to double figures across some parts of southern England, maybe South Wales, with a bit of afternoon sunshine. Don't get used to it though, because look, more cloud and rain spreading its way up from France, and that continues to track north on Thursday. So again, more wet weather for England and Wales, turning again to snow perhaps over the hills of northern England, still snowing over the hills of eastern Scotland. And again, that cold wind blowing on those North Sea coasts throughout. The Met Office warnings are on the Met Office website.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday Five.
You got me good there.
Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight. On the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace
Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 5:38 now. Ministers say they fear Southport-style riots after locals continue to protest, and up to 540 illegal immigrants being dumped on the area of Crowborough. Now, the Sussex Police and Crime Commissioner Katie Bourne, OBE, has stuck up for those involved in recent protests in Crowborough, but has since had a vote of no confidence go in against her. Well, why? Well, let's ask her. So I'm joined in the studio now in Westminster by the Sussex Police and Crime Commissioner Katie Bourne. Katie, welcome to Westminster. A pleasure to have your company. You stepped in, you spoke up for your community, you did the right thing, and you've been admonished by the police. What happened?
Well, it's a police and crime panel, so they're a body of 18 councillors and 2 independent members, and their job is to scrutinise my decisions and to be a critical friend. But last Friday, they decided that they were going to do a public motion, a vote of no confidence in me, because I was standing up for local residents and doing my job.
What did you say and done? I mean, you went for a march with them, right?
I went on the very first march. I spoke to families. I wanted to understand, you know, what on earth is driving them to go out and march.
Responsible policing.
Exactly. And I listened to their views and then I relay those back to policing. That's my job. They told me that I shouldn't have been doing that because I wasn't listening to everybody's views. And then I went to a public meeting where the Home Office were being questioned by the public, and I sat with the residents as well, because up until then, nobody from the establishment had spoken to me or reached out. They still haven't. And I got admonished for that as well. I mean, talk about cancel culture. If you can't stand up and do your job and speak for your local residents, what are we coming to?
You marched with people with 100% legitimate and genuine concerns. We've had many of them on this show before, and many on this channel. They're concerned about safety, about unvetted male immigrants being dumped to the bottom of their gardens with no perimeter fencing. You spoke with locals, and for that, you're getting it in the neck.
I'm getting it in the neck because I didn't speak up for everybody. The trouble is the panel are ideologically driven and they're using their ideology to blind them to what really matters, and that's what matters to the people that elect you. So the residents of Crowborough, you know, they've elected me to be their police and crime commissioner, relay their fears back into policing because it's security. Everybody's concerned about that. And that's what I've done. So, I mean, the whole thing is absolutely, it was an abusive process. It was a kangaroo court. And quite frankly, I was ambushed on the day. And we're taking it further. I've put in a formal complaint.
They would rather you simply kept quiet. They would rather you didn't talk to what? The wrong people, the far right? What's the problem?
Well, what's really interesting is, you know, there's been 13 marches now, 13 weeks, and I went on the very first one. I haven't been back since. And none of them have caused any problems. The people turn out, they're peaceful, they march, they're vocal, but they're peaceful. And really, nobody is listening to them. They feel that nobody's listening to them. But when you do, if you're a public figure, you get cancelled.
And Katie Bourne, one question I haven't been able to ask today, I've had so much breaking news, is that if ministers are saying they're fearful of riots in Crowborough, I put it to you, don't dump 540 illegal immigrants on the people of Crowborough without giving them a voice.
Yeah, it's not the 540, it's the fact they're all men.
Yeah.
That's the issue. These are all men, they're all sexually active, and there's lots of families, there's lots of children. There's a bus stop right outside the camp where school children used to go to school every day, and the migrants aren't kept in, and it's only when they've gone missing for more than 7 days that the Home Office bothers to try and find them.
7 days?
7 days, and then they phone them. And if they answer their mobile phone, they might ask them to come back. I mean, the whole thing is ludicrous. And we've worked out 12 months of policing for this is going to cost our force £5.6 million. And that shouldn't come out of local taxpayers' pockets. So I'm demanding that the government pays for this.
I can't see the people of Crowborough. You can see them there. They're not going anywhere. They're not going to give in. They're resolute, they're correct, they have legitimate concerns, and they weren't consulted. But it does seem incredible that you've also found yourself in the crosshairs of this incredible council. Because what are you meant to do? Keep quiet?
Well, quite. I mean, I think that's what they would like me to do. But, I mean, the amount of support I've had since this was announced from not just people in Crowborough, but right across the country, actually, saying, good for you. Keep standing up. We need more politicians that are willing to represent our views. Because at the moment, you know, the residents, 21,000 people in Crowborough, do not feel that they're being listened to.
It's an astonishing state of affairs. Thank you very much for joining us in the studio today. And that's the Sussex Police and Crime Commissioner, Katie Bourne, OBE. Now, we have a statement we need to read out, and the spokesperson for West Sussex County Council has told GB News this. We are aware that the PCC and the Chief Executive of her office expressed concern regarding the vote taken by the Police and Crime Panel at today's meeting. These concerns have not yet been raised directly with us by the PCC or her office. If a complaint is received, then these will be looked at carefully and responded to appropriately. However, we believe that all processes have been followed correctly in this case. And the Home Office have added this. Robust safety and public protection safeguards were in place at Crowborough, along with specialist security on site and 24/7 CCTV, they added. All asylum seekers will have been screened against policing, criminality and immigration databases before arriving, it's added. What a mouthful. Thank you again for joining us in the studio. Now, still to come, an incredible story. A cherished statue of Britain's youngest ever world boxing champion has been stolen by thieves from a train station in London, and I'll be joined by the grandson of that boxing legend who wants it back before it's melted down for scrap metal. It's an outrage. We're trying to get something done about it. This is GB News, with Britain's #1 news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock, only on GB News. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
We're sort of all looking on here, hoping this story is right.
I think we've all got a little way to go yet, but apparently the Super 60s, we reach our creative peak at the age of 67, so we've all got ages to go. But what's surprising in this report is who's already 67? Madonna, 67. Yeah. Kevin Bacon. Tim Burton, I could kind of understand. Gary Oldman, maybe. But there's loads of people out there that are already in their creative zenith. They're already putting out more than they ever done before. 63% feel more creative than when they were in their 30s.
Madonna's past her peak. She's not producing or letting anything else.
I'll let you have Liam Gallagher.
I'm not letting you have Madonna, Tim.
I am.
No,
Madonna's
you're not.
Still very raunchy and sexy and somebody that I could...
At 67, have you seen the pictures of her recently?
Yes,
Absolutely. No way.
Well, also, Paul Weller's in that category as well, and he's still producing.
Super sexy.
Yeah.
But the report says that at 67, you're obviously mainly starting to retire or take a step back. That's when your creative juices flow.
Well,
that you take up something new, like learning a new language, going to concerts more. So something to look forward to in your 60s.
Well, I think it's very true, because I do think, I mean, speaking from experience, I think that this country is ageist, is absolutely ageist, and sort of our industry is ageist.
Which is ironic, because we do have money to spend, you know. We're actually, a little bit more than somebody that's Generation X and Z, that only 25% haven't had a drink in the last 12 months. At least our 50, 60-year-olds still drink.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates,
lively conversation,
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
and each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
It's 5:47 now. A statue honouring the British boxing legend Teddy Baldock has been ripped from an East London park, leaving his family devastated. His grandson says thieves see history as scrap metal and fears that it could be melted down and simply disappear forever. Well, I'm delighted now to be joined by the grandson of Teddy Baldock, and that is Martin Saxon. Martin, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us. You know, I saw this message on social media about this statue being removed, and it really has desperately impacted people. They feel violated, they feel desecrated, and that's just members of the public. Teddy Baldock was your granddad. Before we talk about the statue, tell us about the man, tell us about the legend.
Martin, I just thought it was quite important before I start this, just to say, you know, I listened to the interview with Rhiannon White's mum, such a brave woman, and obviously your previous guest, Emma. So I just wanted to put it in context that obviously what I've lost pales into all insignificance as to what they're going through. So just wanted to say that at the start of this. So my grandfather, he was from Poplar in the East End of London. He turned professional at 14, so he was fighting for money at the age of 14. By the age of 17, he was a top liner at the Albert Hall. And at 18, he travelled out to America to the New York fight rings. He had 12 fights in 3 months, winning 11 and drawing 1. He fought at Madison Square Gardens twice in that period. He came back to the UK and he was given a 3-fight deal. If he won the first 2 fights, then he'd then challenge for the then vacant bantamweight title in 1927 at the Albert Hall. He won that fight, and by winning that, he then became Britain's youngest ever world boxing champion, aged 19. Tragically, at the end of his career, he had nothing to fall back on, and he did end up dying penniless on the streets of London. It's a very, very sad story. He did a piece in the Sunday People about my mum, saying the daughter he dare not face, where he used to watch her riding route when she used to travel to, or when she worked in the stable at Woodford in Southend. So a very sad story, but, you know, the statue now, it's very sad to watch. I've seen that footage now of them taking it from the plinth, and yeah, very sad.
Martin, this is, you know, your granddad. It's heritage, it's history. It's simply being ripped down by an absolute scumbag, hooded vagabonds as usual. It's just incredible, the heartlessness, the lack of respect. Are you fearful now, Martin, that this just may be treated by these, let's be honest, these vermin, just a scrap metal?
Well, I think the only reason I've taken it down is for the scrap value. You know, it isn't going to go to some private collection because, you know, it's been snapped off just at the ankles. I've spoke to a number of friends of mine that are involved in scrap metal, and, you know, they're probably lucky to get £500 to £1,000 for it. And when I think of the time it took me and the people that helped me raise the funds, and I've watched that footage and I just see it ripped away within a minute, and knowing that what they're going to get for scrap value is pittance. You know,
and it's just a total violation, Martin Saxon. What happens now? I mean, is there any leads for the old bill to go on? Any nearer to getting a resolution, or is it now a situation of trying to raise funds to have that statue replaced?
The trouble is with replacing the statue is, tragically, Carl Payne, who was a fantastic artist, he died a number of years ago, you know, at a young age. We're looking for the moulds, but without those moulds, we can't recast it. So, you know, I can only hope that if it's found, we can remount it. That is possible. But, you know, my main aim for getting all this out into the media was to try and make it too hot to handle, really, in that sense. I have friends from the professional boxing world, down the Peacock Gym, Martin Bowers and Peter Stanley. You know, they've put the word out amongst all the scrap metal merchants that they know within London. And that's all we can do, really.
OK, Martin Saxon, thank you for joining us, and we really hope you get a resolution. Please let's stay in touch, because it really has motivated our viewers and listeners. Thank you very much, and I wish you the best of luck, Martin Saxon. Now, Tower Hamlets Police have told us this. I want to assure the public that our officers are working at pace to identify those responsible and will continue to follow every available line of inquiry. We'd appeal to anyone with information to get in touch with the police. Now, it's 6 p.m. Up next is Jubes & Co, the Queen of Primetime Debate. Jubes, what's on your menu?
Hi there, Martin. Great programme as always. There is, of course, much we need to discuss on the show tonight. We'll get stuck into all of the big topics, as you would expect. But I also want to ask you as well about the row that's brewing over the student loan system. Do you think that this system is a fair one, a fair investment? Or do you think it is ripping off the youth of today? Did you go to university? And if you did, was it worth it for you? I'll see you in a sec.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Evening. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Plenty of warnings remain in place for rain, snow and ice. Cold wind continuing to blow as well through tomorrow, but it should be a brighter day across the south. The rain we've had in the south today from this weather front is creeping northwards as it's hitting the hills of North Wales and northern England, turning a little bit to snow. And some of that snow through the night could come down to lower levels for a time. It could well turn quite icy here as well. We've still got snow falling in eastern Scotland, rain on the coast, but more snow and a strong wind blowing that snow means blizzard. So some pretty horrible travel conditions across eastern Scotland, much of northern England and North Wales, not just through the night, but first thing on Wednesday morning too. We'll see the easterly wind continuing to feed that rain in. So it is rain on the coastal strip, but you don't have to head too far inland before you see that snow falling, really building up over some of the higher routes. Again, western Scotland receiving some shelter, so generally dry here to start Wednesday. Some outbreaks of rain for Northern Ireland and Northern England, but it is turning drier here through the course of tomorrow morning, and certainly a much drier day in the south as a whole. Quite grey, quite misty, quite murky to begin with, but I'm quite hopeful as we go through the day that cloud will tend to break up and we may well see some sunny spells for parts of the Midlands, South Wales, Southern England and East Anglia. Further north though, staying cloudy, staying wet in eastern Scotland with further snow to come here, and again a cold feel in the northeastern corner, but elsewhere quite a bit milder than today. Don't expect it to last though. Look at this, another batch of rain pushes northwards through Wednesday night and Thursday, and with the ground so wet in the south, any extra rainfall could cause some further flooding. And as the wet weather moves north, again there will be some snow mixed in over parts of northern England and still across eastern Scotland. Again, western Scotland with that wind direction should do okay for dry and bright weather. Goodbye.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you for making us Britain's #1 news channel. Together, we have built something truly extraordinary.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. On the M8 eastbound at junction 23, there are restrictions due to a broken down vehicle. On the A470 northbound from Corryton to Nantgarve, congestion is building. In Warwickshire, the A446 northbound between the A452 and the M6 is running around 20 minutes slow in heavy traffic. In Northamptonshire, the A14 eastbound from the M1 Catthorpe interchange to Junction 1 has a crash with one lane closed and delays of about 40 minutes. And on the trains, Great Western Railway has disruption on some routes and South Western Railway on multiple routes. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
We want you to set off on the destination of your dreams this year, as you could win an incredible holiday for two worth £10,000. Courtesy of Riviera Travel, you'll get to choose from 47 tours in over 30 worldwide destinations. We'll also give you £30,000 in tax-free cash to make sure you really make a splash this summer.
For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB19 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 27th of February. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
All too often, people will be sitting at home watching a press conference live, and they'll hear loads of questions being asked, and they'll be thinking, that's not my question. That's not my concern.
We don't care whose feathers we ruffle. We ask the questions that you want answering.
You're all standing on the street protesting and want to have an open discussion.
My name is Patrick Christie's. I do a show for GB News in the UK. Is it possible to talk to you quickly?
Journalism in this country has been a cosy world full of groupthink until now.
Well, this is the best view ever of Whitehall, looking out across all the tractor drivers of England who've come together to make their point.
Hello, so as you can see, I'm here in Westminster as the protest begins.
Yes, I'm very much in the thick of it.
Look, we're challenging narratives here at GB News, and that's what sets us apart.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Jubes & Co. Coming up tonight, things have got a whole lot worse for the Prince of Darkness. Peter Mandelson now finds himself under police investigation. He stepped down from the House of Lords. And to top it all off, even Gordon